just has his picture.
Yeah, there he is.
How's he feeling?
But he's talking, but we can't hear him, unless he's talking on the phone.
Who is he?
He might be talking on the phone.
I need to find him up there. I don't see him.
I scrolled across
there he
on
is.
mine.
He is talking, but not to us. Okay. Are we ready? Here's my mouse. Okay. I would like to announce that a quorum is present, the meeting is duly called, and a notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is now 12:01 p.m. In order to limit attendance at public gatherings, a limited number of staff members will be in attendance in person at today's board meeting. Members of the leadership team as well as staff members will be attending virtually via WebEx, as well as Mr. Miller. The following board members are in attendance in person: Allison Lasan, Angie Cox, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, and Catherine Sells. Board member Tracy Scott Miller is attending virtually via WebEx. And I have asked Ms. Hassett to say the prayer.
Hey, Michael, are you still there?
Yeah, he can hear you now. What do you need, Tracy?
I can hear you, Will.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to talk to Michael. People are having a hard time getting in from the live broadcast.
The live broadcast just kicked
Thanks,
off
Kelly.
about 30 seconds ago.
Sorry, I thought you were Will. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Now we'll ask Ms. Hassett to say the prayer.
And if you would join me, and if you so choose, you could also just have a moment of silence and think of the health and safety of our community members. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you have made for us. We ask that you allow us to have good conversations and discussions about the health and safety of our students and staff as we go through this troubling time of a pandemic, and keep in the forefront of our thoughts the need to educate all of the students in the district. Never more in our time have we had a need to make sure that all of our students are educated equally, so we can have a rich society of students who grow to do things that they're willing and able and capable of doing. Please allow the community to hear the things that we are saying and take them in a way that they understand we're trying our best to keep everyone safe while educating these students. Allow the parents to make the decisions that are best for their students and the staff that best for themselves. We say all these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. At this time, would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. A few reminders for any staff attending via WebEx this afternoon. Please keep your microphone muted. If you are called upon to speak or would like to make a comment, please unmute your microphone before speaking, and when you're finished speaking, please turn off your microphone. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees were given the opportunity to submit comments via LISD's website during the designated time frame. Any comments submitted will be read into the record at this time. Comments cannot exceed 3 minutes, and the board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. And just a reminder that for special meetings, comments are only read about related items that are on the agenda. The first group of comments we had were on the opening of school. Name was Anon, teacher. Returning to school now is foolhardy. In order to best protect our community, we would ideally not be returning to school until there is a vaccine. Taking this semester to support our district's families and teachers in every way possible for students to continue remote learning. If we return to school now, we are undoubtedly going to be facing massive outbreaks, thus closing the schools again for perhaps an even longer period of time than if we would have waited for a vaccine. However, because the government is essentially forcing us to return to classrooms, we should at least take advantage of the TEA's leadway of 3 weeks and return to school after Labor Day. This virus is evolving, and we still do not understand all that it can do. The TEA and the government are falsely claiming that children are at lower risk, but even if this was true, a child is not an island. He or she will take home to virus and spread it exponentially amongst his or her family, who will then continue to spread it to our businesses. Further, it is not just children we should be concerned about. We should take every precaution humanly possible to protect our staff, faculty, and administration. It is simply too early to return to school. The virus does not follow a calendar. It only wants to spread. Why are we giving it the opportunity to do so in a district of 50,000 plus students? Please consider fighting the TEA on this and delaying the start of school as long as humanly possible. Again, ideally until there is a vaccine. Thank you for your consideration. Name, Christina Cortapazza. First, I would like to thank the board for all their hard work you've been doing this summer to ensure our children are safe and healthy this year. I have a child who will be going into 4th grade at Timber Creek. There are a few things I would like the board to consider. First, I would like the board to look at delaying the start of the fall semester. We have a very high number of COVID cases in Texas right now, and I think that a delay until at least after Labor Day is a good first step. Second, when schools do reopen, I would like to see LISD implement a mask requirement for all students, not just those who are 10 and older. My son is 9, and I will be requiring him to wear one regardless. I don't think it's fair to our teachers and staff to have them in a building with younger children not wearing protection. I would also like the district to enable us to choose a hybrid option. I want my son to be in school, but I also want him to be safe. I think the best choice is to enable less students to attend on any given day. Finally, I want to be sure that there are clear guidelines for what happens when a suspected or confirmed case of COVID is found on a campus. Will parents be notified? At what point would a school have to close? Thank you for your time, and thank you again for your dedication to our students. Latina, and her comment is, in your decision making, please approach it from a grade level perspective. It is difficult to conduct remote learning for younger ages and keep them engaged for 6 hours a day. I have a kindergartner this year, and she needs in-person instruction and structure. She would wear a mask if necessary. Rachel Medina, please consider that masks in the classroom are not necessary. This virus does not impact children as it does the elderly. There's a 99% survival rate. Masks on campus will inevitably create extra trash. I live near a school. I see the playground trash daily. It is unreasonable to ask anyone to wear a mask all day, let alone a child. Please do not cancel specials or force them to be in the same classroom all day. Please do not shut down the entire school if there's a case. There's a 99% survival rate. Please do not use carcinogenic chemicals to clean the schools. Paige Dixon, her comment is, I have 2 school-age children. I have deep concerns not only for the safety of all our children, but for the safety and well-being of our educators. The lives and health of our citizens should be of the highest priority, and any decisions to reopen schools or the manner in which they should be executed should be done so with extreme caution and extensive planning. I believe the decision to reopen our schools in August is premature and would put thousands at risk of contracting COVID-19. The guidance from TEA is poor. It promises resources, and it is from my personal experience as a former PTA president that understands we should believe patterns and not promises, because when it comes to extending much-needed resources to school, it is the practice of the state to overpromise and always underdeliver. I believe there should be a delayed start to the school year to allow the state and local officials to implement preventative measures that will mitigate the spread of this virus and make it more fathomable to open schools. I believe when the board considers safety measures, educators should be included. You've been elected to lead us. When in the business of education, I expect you to make education decisions, not ones based on popular opinion, personal opinions, or politics. We have questions on opening schools, and I will read those questions. If we go online learning, how will special education services, IEPs, et cetera, be handled? This past spring was not done well. Parents had to figure out their own accommodations. Special education students need more support than other parents. Please, and that was from Janine Bellissimo. Dana Berlin, please let us know what the disposition of reopening schools in August. We as a family have a lot of personal decisions to make. Courtney Dungan, hello. First, thanks to each of you for your hard work to determine the safest options for our children this 2021 school year. Are you able to please shed light on e-learning time requirements and expectations for parents to best decide on the right options for their family? Will there be any flexibility on a student's learning schedule? For example, providing the opportunity for recording Zoom learning sessions for viewing at a later time? Or are students required to be online at designated times in order to get credit? Further, will all e-learning be done on advice, or will there be a blend of printed materials, hands-on activity lessons, and video Zoom lessons? Thank you. Carrie Devon, what protective rights do the teachers have in regards to student families refusing to wear a mask? Also, if teachers are exposed or one of their family members is, will they be expected to take personal days each time? Kelly Duggan, will booster clubs be able to meet on, off campus? Will we be able to sell tickets in person? Will we be able to sell concessions? What will the capacity of auditorium performances? The next couple of comments. Diversity is critical within all levels of LISD for our community, and the world is diverse. We must strive daily to show and teach our students and some adults that we are all valued contributors. Although the desegregation of schools occurred over a half century ago, we are still experiencing segregation within central administration and leadership. The time is now to put forth an actionable diversity plan with accountability and transparency by Yvonne Coleman and Sherry Stewart. I respectfully submit this statement. I ask that you place priority on diversity in your discussion and decisions made on behalf of students in LISD. Please acknowledge that diversity is valuable and necessary in all levels of school functioning, including central administration, school leadership, and teacher hiring. I ask that you make a commitment to acknowledge and address the lack of diversity in these three areas noted above. If you have made a commitment, please outline the plan for diversity initiatives. And Kelvin Smith, I have been involved with Marcus Black History Club since my son was a freshman in Marcus in 2003. Mr. Roger was our principal then, and he allowed us to form the MBHC and to have our Taste of Soul event each February to bring and share some diversity with students. Unfortunately, this is only one day out of the school year. Marcus has become more diverse than when I started helping out there back in 2003, but it's not reflected in the staff and the programs offered at the school. Granted, I am not there to see all the faculty, but my kids, when they were there, and others I know, talk about the lack of teachers who look like them. Diversity is important not just to the students who want to see a teacher who looks like them, but also for the students to learn something about someone who doesn't look like them, whether discussing our different cultures, languages, the way we dress, or just the way we live on a daily basis. Diversity provides our children with opportunities to learn from someone with a different background than theirs. In closing, let me say the word diversity has been thrown around for years. Rarely does our efforts rise to the point of achieving it. I would like to hope that Marcus and LISD as a whole would be on the bleeding edge of bringing our schools and our communities together through thoughtful and meaningful efforts to move diversity off the paper and our tongues and into our hearts, schools, and communities. And that is the conclusion of our comments. Thank you all for taking the time to submit those. First up, our action item, Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. Board, you initially approved this expenditure for tracks at both McCamey and Huffines Middle Schools. We then changed the system as far as bidding system and did a CSP and saved about $200,000 by doing that, and so we just need the board's approval.
Does anyone have questions, or would you like to make the motion? Make the motion, Ms. Cox?
I move that the board approve the CSP 267320 LASD truck replacements at Huffines and McCamey Middle School contract and anticipated expenditures with vendor, is it Caststone Solutions Company as recommended by administration.
Do I have a second? Ms. Hassett? Are there any questions or comments?
I just want to thank the facilities department for noticing that the first bid that came in through our regular method was a bit high, and that this will save the district a great deal of money. So kudos to them.
Thank you, Ms. President. Anything else? Okay, if nothing else, all in favor, please raise your hand. And I see that the motion carries, and that is 6-0. Okay, and moving on, discussion items.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sells. And just a reminder to the board, if all of us need to make sure we speak into our mics. So So just a few opening comments. So, while it's been a interesting 4-month journey, and it's not even really quite 4 months, seems like about a year and a half. I'm an eternal optimist. I have been my entire life. I certainly hope we start school, everything goes as planned, no closures, no changes in our plans, etc. But I'm also realistic, and I just don't think that's going to happen. So we've talked numerous times over the last 4 months that we have the need to be flexible and nimble. That's not going to change anytime in the near future. There's no doubt.
Dr. Rogers, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Could you make sure that everybody's speaking into the microphone? It's difficult. We're getting taps. Community members are emailing, but I'm having a hard time myself hearing what's going on.
Okay. So, well, Michael, my mic does not seem very loud. So my voice is loud, but my mic doesn't.
Mine, of course, is very loud.
Is that better,
Mine
Tracy?
is.
Mine's
Correct.
fairly loud.
Mine's
Mine-
pretty loud.
That's better. I think it's when people are turning their heads left or right or don't talk into the mic. There was
Yeah.
some discussion there earlier that I missed as it relates to the motion.
Okay.
No discussion you missed. We
Yeah,
just made a
there was
motion.
no discussion. There was just comment by Ms. Prosnick thanking the staff for finding those savings for the district.
Okay. So there's no doubt that I prayed a lot for wisdom. I truly appreciate all the input, support, and prayers from others. There's also timing is everything. We've actually been asked why we didn't do this meeting sooner or later, and so we totally understand some districts have done this 2 weeks ago. We believe that this is the latest date, and yet if you do it too early, you have to change anyway. There's so many LISD staff that have worked relentlessly. I'd certainly like to acknowledge Dr. Rapp, her team of curriculum experts, the others who work with her, our chiefs of school, our chief executive directors that have led this effort. In addition, the continued efforts of our communications team led by Amanda Brim and our technology team led by Brian Kobeck. We realize that our decisions affect our families and staff. It is critical that we recognize that our students, parents, and staff have experienced significant disruption to their daily lives since COVID-19. Loss of jobs, financial instability, health concerns, loss of family members, and more. We also know that we must have an expanded focus on students and staff mental health and well-being in the future. For all of us, words cannot express the role of our medical experts, healthcare professionals, first responders, so many others, our custodians, cafeteria workers, all across the country. For LISD, special thanks to Dr. Matt Richardson, Jody Gonzalez, Juan Rodriguez, who you're going to meet in just a second, and other Denton County officials, all led by County Judge Andy Eads. In addition, a special thanks to our own Director of Health, Melanie Vincelette, and our Director of Safety, Matt Garrett. This pandemic has caused more collaboration than ever. That's one of the few positives. Weekly Zoom meetings with Denton County officials, weekly Zoom meetings with other Denton County superintendents, bi-weekly Zoom meeting with the TEA Commissioner, Mike Morath, along with numerous regular WebEx meetings with our board and LISD leadership. Our presentation is 38 slides. I promise you it was a whole lot more, and we pared it down. Please don't take the 38 slides as an indication of the enormous amount of work that's been done leading up to this meeting. And I promise you there will be a lot more detail provided to our parents and staff in the upcoming week. I do want to make a TEA disclaimer. Yesterday at 3 p.m., Commissioner Morath gave us some update, which these are the things, a 77-page document guidebook for back-to-school planning, updated answers as far as public health planning guidance, attendance and enrollment, FAQs. I promise you we then spent yesterday afternoon and evening double-checking with our compliance with what TEA released yesterday afternoon. We felt really good that the great majority of what we are planning is absolutely in compliance. And Ms. Sells, I just ask you and the board if you could, and I know it's a long time to wait, but if we could just save questions till the end of the presentation. So with that, if we can move on, can you put, we need to have the presentation up there. So we have with us Juan Rodriguez, who's the Assistant Health Director for Denton County, and greatly appreciate Juan join us. I just felt like it was important to hear the latest from him. And just a side note, he is also an LISD parent. So that's Juan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm not able to see my own slides on your screen, but I'll try to guide you all through it and what I should be expecting. I did want to say thank you for having me on. LISD has been a great public health partner always. I talk frequently with Melanie Vincent, your Director of Health Services. Melanie also serves on our Public Health Advisory Committee. She serves on our Ethics Committee. She frequently comes to our communicable disease response team meetings. So she's been wonderful to work with any infectious disease, any political concern, Ebola, MERS, and again here with COVID. I just want to say thank you because LSD is always proactive. This is an example of how LSD is always thinking to do what's best and do what's coming prior to the dates that it actually is here. So I just want to give you all context and information about what's going on in Denton County. So I was going to go through some of our website, our interactive website that's information for all to have. So I was going to talk about what's going on today, and maybe even you can see how you can find this when you need this tomorrow or the day after, or a week, and how it's interactive. You can share this, educate others, and that kind of stuff. So me being in my profession, I hate being out of date, even by a date. So I made some of these slides yesterday, but I did update our first one this morning. So if you see the very first the first slide, it really is our splash page, our landing page to our statistics website. So all of our information is very easy to find. You just go to dentoncounty.com. You can find a banner quickly for COVID and coronavirus. But we have a testing website and a statistics website and a information website. So they're all there, very easy to find, but those things are pretty easy as well. dentoncounty.com, /COVID stats, and you can find what I'm talking about. So this is easy by phone, by websites, by PC, everything tablets. And if you scroll down, you can find everything you need for Denton County. So you can easily see the number of cases that we have. As of yesterday, 4 o'clock, we have 3,459 cases. You can see active and recovered there as well. You can see deaths. The website itself is just, the first slide just shows you the cumulative cases by day and by category. And if you hover over your mouse over these sections, you can see the numbers specifically for deaths or active or recovered, those kinds of things. So if you scroll down, you can also find, this is the next slide, the number of cases by age. So again, this is, people miss this portion of that. There's several tabs and so much more information that is just what you see on the first site. You can hover over these and see the male versus female. The tabs themselves underneath don't just have cases, but they have deaths by age and transmission and ethnicity for deaths and for cases. But here you can see where most of our cases are. 25% of our cases are actually in the 20 to 29 year age group. That is a new resurgence of cases. When this started, we saw many in the 50 and above. But lately, we've been seeing this great increase in cases, and many of them come from this age group. Luckily, this age group doesn't get as seriously sick as others. They will end up hospitalized at a lower rate, many fewer deaths. But we do know that any spread is a concern, and they can spread it to their families, of course, and to others. The next slide should have the deaths by age, so you can see the staggering difference in what that looks like. Again, the most cases are in 20 to 29-year-old, and the most deaths are in the 60 to 69-year-old. So the only 37 deaths in Denton County is not terrible. It's about a little over 1%, but it's much more severe if it does infect someone who's older with underlying conditions, and that's a lot of older people. But that death rate can change quite drastically from the young to the old. It can be much more severe, more likely to get up in the hospital or an ICU or to end up in a death. So we are worried about that population, of course. The next slide is kind of like a typical epi curve. You should be seeing really from the beginning, from the onset of through March through yesterday, the number of cases by the date of onset. So it's very typical, normal to see a decline in the last 2 or 3 weeks, as you would expect. People who in the last 2 or 3 weeks are just now getting sick or just now getting tested, reported, and investigated. So it's normal to see that decline in the last 2 weeks. So you want to try to ignore that and see that the kind of this resurgence of cases that did start in mid or early June through mid-June is really kind of the increase that we've seen lately. So this continues to be the case. This is by onset of symptoms. Very different from date of reporting or other things, date of test. So this is going by onset, a typical classic epi curve. The very next slide is, apologize, underneath that on the same slide is the percent positives. So as we're trying to look at metrics of themes, one thing that we want to try to give context and some consistency to is the number of percent positive. So not just raw data, raw numbers that the number of cases are going up, number of tests are going up, but to give it some value. So the number of tests that we do over the number of cases we report is like a percent positive. So you can see where this was hovering many weeks around 4 or 5%, and you see this kind of increase into the double digits. Last 2 weeks in the 10, 11%. So the number of tests being done in Denton County is growing drastically. Our last week was the biggest, about 6,200 tests in Denton. We also reported 600 plus cases. So you can see why that's about 10% positivity rate. So it's much higher than it's been before, and it's something that we use for other diseases like flu. But you can see that is an increase in testing as we have expanded testing to other groups as well. So where we were pretty selective with testing in the beginning because it was so vital and it was a low resource to select only travel or cases that really look like it could be COVID or contact. We've expanded our testing past just the sick, past just critical infrastructure. We've added people who are over 60 and people who are contact. So the more we expand testing to allow more to get tested, even then you would anticipate that would drop your rate, and it hasn't. It actually has gone up. So we've seen that the last couple of weeks. If that wasn't enough, the next slide is kind of a summary of the cases reported in the last 4 weeks. And this is a really easy graph to see where it's not a jagged zigzag line that's going up and down. You can just see the consistent growth week by week the last 4 weeks in Denton. Going from early June, like I said, that's about 20 cases to about 400 cases to 500 to then 650 or so. So you can see the consistent growth in cases in Denton. So hopefully, this can start to trend down at some point, but right now we're just trending forward and up and higher every day. These are similar to things we're seeing in hospitals, more hospitalizations, more use of ICU beds, more use of ventilators. But in Denton County, there is still a lot of capacity in hospitals, and we do monitor that as well. We're seeing these trends in those places as well. So that's kind of the summary I wanted to give for you all on COVID in Denton County. And again, the website is very useful. All these metrics are there. There's many tabs, and there's just a lot of information you can see as it grows and it changes and evolves. And you can always go back and find what you may need. The last slide I provide is something that's so basic, that's so important in mitigation and preventing disease. It's easy to explain and it's hard to understand, and every example has a nuance. So I wanted to just talk about basic epidemiology, public health of a case and the context of a case. It's easy to say if you're sick, you're positive with COVID-19. It's easy to say you should be excluded, isolated, be at home until you recover. Recovery is hard to understand for some. It really is just, we're looking for the 3 things, and you mentioned this earlier, you kind of find this guidance in the TEA as well. The 3 things we're looking for is minimum 10 days, looking for resolution of symptoms, looking for fever-free for 72 hours, and that day can be a moving target, because if you're still sick on day 9 or 10 or 11, it keeps moving. So that nuance is confusing to people, that it's not a strict 10 days, it's not a strict 14 days, that it is a moving target. But if you're recovered, you can be removed from isolation as soon as 10 days, but it can be moved later. Context of cases should be quarantined for 14 days. The definition of contact is hard. Usually a working operational guidance is 6 feet, 15 minutes, but that can be hard to define for some. Contact should be up for 14 days. It's easy to say you were exposed at work and you should go home for 14 days and then in 14 days you can come back. But when you have a contact in your home, that can be much more than 14 days. If you have children in your household and one's positive and the other one's negative, well, they likely had exposure to each other. So then one stays home because they have the disease and one stays home because they were a contact. And the 14 days calendar starts, for many people understand that, but really that child is being re-exposed and re-exposed and re-exposed basically daily to the other child, likely. So that new exposure just pushes out that 14 days even further. So really their 14 days starts when the initial case is resolved. So when we finally think the first person is not contagious, that's when everyone else in the household can start their 14 days. So you can see how this can quickly be a child being home for 14 days to actually being 24, just quickly. And that's not saying this is a challenge for families to understand and then to comply. If another person gets sick, then the whole household is starting over again. So large families can struggle with this, and we see that, in work and in places where you can do social distancing, wear a face mask, there may not be a lot of transmission, but at homes, it's very hard for us to not dine together, not sleep in the same rooms together, and not give this to our family. So if you have a case, and then another case, and then another case, this quarantine and isolation for families can be quite extended. Well, that's really all I really wanted to say, and say thank you for everything you're doing. I'm glad you're getting together to discuss this. I know you have a lot of decisions that are difficult to meet the needs of the community, the students, and the staff, but I thank you for being proactive in everything you do.
Thank you very much, Juan, and board and folks. Now you see why we depend on the experts. So, and I appreciate that you were able to join us in your tight schedule, Juan. So,
thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so Michael, if you'll put up the presentation, we'll continue. Okay, so today what we hope are our outcomes is, one, as you just heard from Juan, how we depend on the experts, and we'll talk about that. We want to give you a very brief review of our at-home learning from what happened from March to May of this past spring. But our main purpose is to preview the reopening of school scenarios and hear from our task forces as far as their updates, and also discuss some calendar considerations, and then at the end, of course, some probably a lot of board discussion. So we already heard from Juan. We also depend on other experts, the CDC, and there's a link there. They've certainly provided us considerations for schools. Cook Children's our healthcare system have recommendations for reopening schools K-12 in Texas, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and then, of course, TEA, which I had to change this slide as of late yesterday because they did issue their public health and reopening guidelines July 7th. So anyway, we also, and we're not going to spend a lot of time, but please know we have paid attention to the reopening of schools even in other countries and what they've done, and this is just an example of that. And so the purpose of this slide is to make it clear we listen to a lot of people, all right? Our families, students, staff, other districts, community members, national leaders, state leaders, TEA, local leaders, and, of course, medical experts. So it can be sometimes daunting, all the information and direction that we get to sift through. So looking back, some key takeaways of at-home learning. One, we had a student survey in late May. All our students grades 3 through 12 were able to give their feedback regarding what their experience was like. And so we had over 13,000 students respond, and here are a few of their reflections. Nearly 80% of the students reported they used a district-issued iPad, with 5,700 students also stating they used more than one device. 81% of our students reported no difficulties, which was great news. There were some small percentages, the highest of which was 4.5% reported difficulty with internet and/or connectivity. 55% of our students actually liked the flexibility of the at-home learning. allowed, and then 23% indicated that the timelines in keeping up were the most difficult. We also surveyed in June our district and campus leaders just to sort of get their reflections on what they saw and witnessed. Their input was WebEx and Canvas have been invaluable as communication collaboration tools and certainly plan to continue their use in the future. We know that Canvas was an issue for our elementary parents because we haven't trained our elementary teachers for that, which is something that we're planning on doing. Implementation of Canvas and Google Drive became relevant for the reluctant and positive growth in usage. We found more efficient ways of doing things, resulting in these new constraints as virtual meetings eliminated travel and allowed participants who might not attend otherwise. And from the technology world, we know that connectivity and device issues and juggling work while supporting child learning were challenges, not only challenges for our parents, but challenges for our staff. Some takeaways, I'm going to have to read it from a page. Sorry about that. I got it. I think, I'm not going to read this entire page, but I think it's important for us to understand that we know students, for the most part, need in-person interaction, accountability, and support from teachers, especially our students with the most significant needs. We also understand the struggles that our staff had. We know families, many of our parents are working families. They rely on schools not only provide a place for their children to learn, but also a safe, healthy place for them to spend the day where they can go to work. And then curriculum, we understand, we believe pass-fail grading was implemented due to the manner of closure, but it's not a system that we plan to use in the future. And then grades 4 through 12, because they had been regularly using technology in their classroom, we provide iPads to students grades 4 through 12. They were certainly, they could pivot a lot easier than those kids in pre-K through 3, which is no surprise. So anyway, all right. At home, there were some positive outcomes for at-home learning. One, the extensive experience with software such as WebEx, and you can see the things that it provided are expanded access to technology for all of our students, grades K through 12. Our technology department did a great job trying to provide expanded number of devices and expanded internet access. The utilization of Canvas, and we know that we've got to expand that to elementary sooner than later. Our students had flexibility and increased autonomy, which many of them liked. Minimal issues with student behaviors, which was a kudos to probably our program regarding digital citizenship. Teachers' time shifted to increase levels of individual conversations with students and parents, which was a positive, that they could have more face-to-face time, even though it was through WebEx. And our quantity of devices made LISD better prepared than most school districts because we had the 1-to-X program. I can't imagine school districts that did not have the access to devices that we did and how they could pull it off. Our students and teachers, grades 4 through 12, had good routines for operating online, and our just incredible adaptability by our campus leaders, teachers, and students. So, a second. So, for the learning options as of, well, let me go through some challenges. We know, looking ahead, we've got to be flexible and nimble. We absolutely believe we can do this. Some challenges we know that we've all received, and I know the board has too, a high volume of parent and staff emails that indicate there are some who don't want any safeguards implemented for this school year. They want school the way things were. That's really just not realistic. Those who do want significant changes and stringent protocols, those who do not feel safe sending their children to school no matter what we do, and those who want their child to attend some in person and some classes virtually. There's no doubt, which we'd all love to, but there's just no doubt we're not going to make everyone happy. Our goal is to provide and implement reasonable health safety protocols when possible. With that said, LISD plans to use the following guiding principles to reopen. And so these are the guiding principles. We want to ensure safe learning and working environments for our students and staff, so new operational guidelines are required, and we've been working frantically on those and done a great job. We will continue to depend on the medical and health experts. We will ensure all students receive instruction that meets the LISD mission and vision with necessary supports. We know that means we've got to make sure they have access to technology and connectivity. We know we've got to provide social, emotional wellness and health supports, and we absolutely know we've got to provide additional supports to meet the needs of our special populations. We want to provide choice to families to the greatest extent possible. We know we need to provide training time and support for our staff to prepare for a successful year, and we've got to provide proactive, clear communication to all of our families and staff. So here are the learning options for 2021, and LISD families will have two options for returning to school in August. Option one is in-person learning. Students return to campus full-time with operational procedures very modified for health and safety reasons. Or option two, a full-time virtual learning system. Now, as of yesterday, as I mentioned during Commissioner Morath's regular Zoom meeting, superintendents were informed that hybrid model was only allowed for the first 3 weeks in the way we planned the hybrid model. What we had originally planned, board, is the hybrid model to be a contingency if we had to move from full in-person to partial in-person. We'd move to an A-B hybrid model, which you'll hear more about. Now he's saying that the only way you can provide a hybrid model is in conjunction with a full in-person and a full virtual. And so that certainly makes some changes for us. So we're calling our hybrid model Contingency Plan A, and then that's coming off, as you notice in the diagram, off of in-person. It won't affect those that are virtual. And then we have Contingency Plan B if for some reason we all have to move back to at-home learning, remote, then that would be considered Contingency Plan B. But for most of the purpose, we're going to talk about option one, option two, and we are going to talk some about the hybrid model, okay? Hello. Well, I did want to certainly express my appreciation to the 25,485 parents who responded to our parent survey that represents over 39,000 of our students. And you can see the breakdown there, board. But I wanted just to, and you have this information, you were provided, board, this information. I just wanted to give a few takeaways from what I gleaned from it. The calendar question, the lowest percentage of was extend the length of the day, but I believe that's still our best option, and I'm going to explain that to you later. The highest percentage was online, but I don't think they realize that online is not the same version as what they experienced this past spring. It's a much more rigorous, extensive version. So we truly believe the best version of education is in person, as we've already stated. I absolutely have concerns about extending into this next summer. This is for me personally because I think because this summer was a quote-unquote abnormal summer regarding families, travel, so on, I just think next summer is even more critical to try to get to some kind of new normal. And so I'm really concerned about that. Another takeaway from the parent survey was nearly 45% stated they preferred return in person, with the next highest percentage being hybrid. Another takeaway is slightly more than 60% of our parents stated they are very comfortable in person with increased safety, which is good news. And then transportation, I have great appreciation to our parents who made it clear that they could provide transportation if the circumstances limited ridership, which was really great. Only 12.3% of our parents said that they really could not get their kid there, those that are eligible for riding a bus in one age group. So that was great. We also did a recent survey with our staff and very grateful that over 4,800 of our staff provided their input, and most of those staff were our instructional campus staff, which is what we needed to hear from that group. A higher percentage of our staff chose extend the day, but 49% still wanted online if the school was closed. About 60% of our staff, no matter if they're elementary school, middle school, or high school, stated they are very comfortable with returning. So that's a high percentage. And I know the great majority of teachers that I run into, I talk to, they want to teach kids. I mean, that's what they do. 3 of the biggest concerns for our staff, though, were for returning to work were 1, social distancing, 2, what's the impact on instructional routines and procedures, and their own personal health. Our staff seem very comfortable with all the safety measures. Actually, those all range from 79% to up to 92%. The lowest one in all those choices, if you notice, was 57% with lunch periods in the classroom. I can't really blame them for that, but it still may be necessary. So with that, I'm going to shift to our task force's work. I just want to, again, say thanks for the hundreds, and I mean hundreds of hours our task force members, which consist of principals, assistant principals, teachers, counselors, central office folks, have put into this effort. Before we get started with their work, I need to also state that there are some attendance and grading requirements which will be required in all school operating scenarios. It's very clear you can't have different grading procedures, and we will be taking attendance whether you choose the full virtual or whatever. That is required. And also just want to express my thanks to the others that have joined us behind us, who you'll hear from for their work. So I'm going to turn it now over to Dr. Rapp, our Deputy Superintendent.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Rogers. So if you'll advance the slides for me, though, because I don't have the clicker. Thank you so much. It's weird to ask the superintendent to advance your slides, but there you go. Basically, as Dr. Rogers said, we knew there was not any guidance about the upcoming school year, and it was unknown what we were going to need to face when it came time to plan. And we didn't want to wait for people to issue that guidance for us without getting started. So we convened several different groups, and as Dr. Rogers addressed, we knew these groups would need to represent a variety of opinions. These task forces that we grouped that we're sharing the work of today have worked tirelessly, as Dr. Rogers has said, throughout the month of June. They've given up time on their vacations to join numerous WebExes and do research on their own, because as he referenced, there are a lot of different areas of research out there that we could look at, even though there was not specific guidance necessarily at the time we started from the state. We knew that when we started this work in June that not all of their work might be able to be used, but we knew that we could put that information into an emergency operations playbook so that we would have the work that's been gathered should we have to call upon it at any time, and that is definitely what we plan to do. As the leaders of these groups share information with you today, we will also have an online member from each of their committees as well that has joined us. So I'm going to ask first that Rebecca Clark come up. We're going to talk about option 1, the in-person learning and students returning to campus full-time with operational procedures adjusted. In-person learning and the approach to modifying the operational procedures for health and safety, the charge to this task force was to really revisit our operational guidelines that can be implemented depending on the level of transmission of the virus for in-person learning, where all students can return to campus every day and the situation does not require us to limit the amount of students in our building at any one time. These task forces were broken up for looking at these operational guidelines into elementary, middle, and high school because we do believe a differentiated approach is called for. Lori Litchfield led our elementary group, and online with us today is Kelly Hyunka. Rebecca Clark led our middle school group, and online with us today is Stephanie Webb. And Andy Plunkett led our high school group, and online with us today for that is Jim Baker. The task force groups, if you'll advance to the next slide for me, working on this, on the operational guidelines, realized that a one-size-only response would not be the best option, and that we would need to be sure we provide our campuses with differentiated guidance that accounts for the fluid situation that we're finding ourselves in. While we have not yet determined the criteria for what would constitute a move from one level to the next, we're still working through that. We're confident that their work that Ms. Clark's going to talk to you about today for the groups and our philosophy on this approach provides the flexibility we need to respond to this situation. So Rebecca, if you would share about the thinking of the groups for me.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So Lori Litchfield, Andy Plunkett, and I were tasked with working with these in-person operational guidelines task force members, great groups including teachers, special ed, fine arts, athletics representation, as well as campus administrators. And from the very beginning, our goal was to make sure that we were creating a working document that would provide critical guidance for campus principals as they started to reopen their campuses. And we were very focused, all three groups, on keeping student and staff safety a priority in that work. As Dr. Rapp mentioned, we quickly realized that one-size-fits-all was not going to be applicable. The needs of a pre-K student are so different from a 12th grader, and so the work at these three levels was important, but when Ms. Litchfield, Mr. Plunkett, and I came together, there were many commonalities that's going to allow us to have some consistency across the district while still meeting the needs of the different levels. We also pretty quickly in these groups realized that one level of guidance is not going to be appropriate. As Dr. Rapp also mentioned, it's very fluid with what transmission is happening within our community and what risk mitigation is being recommended, and we wanted to be able to be responsive to that. So we decided to create a level system similar to what the CDC uses so that we could shift our operations more fluidly in response to the situation. And so you'll see that there is a orange and a yellow and a green level in the middle up there. The red level would be where we operated the last 9 weeks of the 1920 school year with full closure, and then the blue level would be where fully normal operations could resume. The orange level guidelines are the most restrictive for being on campus, and the task force members do recommend considering this level for the start of school. The next level would be yellow, which is somewhat restrictive, and then the green level has the least number of restrictions. And so having this level system, we believe, will allow us to move throughout the school year based on the needs of the community. And so at this point, that's it, kind of in a nutshell. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Rapp or Dr. Rogers to take a look at our orange level.
I think I have the next one, the fun. So this is just a board this is an example of what level orange, and I'm not going to read through all these examples. I know the first one is about face coverings, and of course, you know, with the governor's executive order GA-29 on July 2nd, of course, he said that face coverings are required, but he gave the exception to any person younger than the age of 10. And so even before this, we, of course, were working on this. It would never be our intent for our students to have a face covering on all 7 hours they're at school. I mean, you know, what I think even the governor's order states is that if you can social distance, then it's not required. And so certainly we plan on that. We also, yesterday in the TEA thing, if you notice the next bullet talks about temperature screenings, and so we really were planning, and we still may do it. That's why this is a draft. But we plan to somehow do temperature screens either in classrooms or at entrances, whether random or every kid. And of course, for every student that becomes problematic when you have a high school of 2,500 or 3,000. But then yesterday, actually, TEA released their guidance on temperature screening, saying that according to a lot of research from whoever they receive it from, that temperature screenings of children are really not very effective because children are so asymptomatic anyway that they really don't show the symptoms even through temperature. And so that's something that I just want to make it clear, board, to y'all, that we will certainly circle back around and revisit. But I wanted to put that out there because it is something that we have discussed in length. You notice other things. Certainly, we've always emphasized hand washing, never like we will in the future. Hand sanitizer, enhanced cleaning procedures, revising some of our classroom arrangements, all those types of things, smaller groups, different ways to get meals. Those are the kind of things that would be in place in this mitigation level orange. Okay, so we just wanted to give you that. And once again, just more details about this, will be provided to parents and our staff early next week, because early next week we're going to, by Wednesday, July 15th, we're going to ask our parents to start to begin the process of what their selection for their learning option is. And if I'm a parent, I need to know some more detail before I can make that final decision, and certainly we understand that. I think I'm kicking it back to, if I can, there we go.
So I'm going to ask Dr. Thornell to come up, and we're going to talk about option 2, full-time virtual. As he comes up, just to reiterate what Dr. Rogers said about the level system with the operational guidelines. Again, now that TEA has issued guidance, we are reading through that. We do feel very confident in what they've released versus the level system that we've created. But the team did a really good job of really addressing all those critical areas that are most important in the operations category. So thank you again, Ms. Clark, for sharing on behalf of that group. So the second option we'll have available for students will be a full-time virtual learning option, and Dr. Thornell led this group, and members of the group are online with us today: Adrian Gall, Karen Seeley, and Michelle Jacobson. The charge to this task force was to create a virtual learning program pre-K through 12 for students whose families choose to keep them at home. As Dr. Thornell will share with you, and as Dr. Rogers has already stated, this virtual learning program is not the same as at-home learning. We're not calling it at-home learning. It is a virtual learning program for pre-K through 12, and the group has done a great job researching and planning for this virtual program. One of the things that we learned, as Dr. Rogers referenced, was the struggle at elementary managing multiple platforms. So things like that we learned during the at-home period is information that they used in guiding their decisions. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thornell to talk about the virtual learning option.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This was a great first task, and welcome to the district. So,
By the way, you didn't get the dress code memo, did you?
The joke's on the new guy,
But I appreciate
right?
that.
Yes, I appreciate that, too.
That's my fault. I'm sorry about it.
I had to relearn how to tie a tie this morning. No, I really did appreciate it. It was a good task for me to go through as a new person to the district, and I was amazed and very pleased with the number of resources that we have here in LISD to make these things happen. And so one of the first challenges and one of the acknowledgments our group had to make was we don't believe virtual is the best thing for kids. And we have to say that up front, that we hope that they all get to come back in school and continue to use technology to enhance their learning, but that was a difficult charge of our task. The other piece was we wanted to acknowledge that it wasn't going to be like springtime learning, and that we really had to meet the needs and the goals and the aspirations of Lewisville ISD, we needed to ramp up our virtual learning process and our pathway. So those were two big charges that we had, and I will say that our team spent countless hours, the learning and teaching team, reviewing curriculum and how could we make this work and how could we make it best for kids. And TEA threw us a few curveballs along the way the last couple of weeks, but we believe that we've done the best we can for that. And so I'd like to talk about those two options. If I can look at this slide. So what we're really looking at is two different versions, and those are nice. We know that we have some families and students that will choose to go full-time virtual, and that would mean that they would be at home all the time, and they would get all their learning virtually, and we think there's some pros to that. Obviously, it's very safe for our students if they feel the need to do that, but there's also, there could be some cons. It's not back face-to-face, right? And so those are things families are going to have to choose. The second piece that we'll talk through a little bit is we're calling a virtual plus. And when I first heard this scenario and we first started talking about it, I will be honest, it made me a little nervous. How do we do this? How can we make it work? But the more we talked about it, the more we thought like it's important for our kids to have as many choices as possible. And so a virtual plus will have students that can do some classes at home, but they can also have a limited in-person time on campus. And we are doing that for the secondary only. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the differences between the two right now. So in the first scenario where we talk about just being at home, our pre-K would be half day, and they would be provided some resources through the LISD curriculum. Kinder through 5, our program would be offered all virtually. We do have some concerns about a few of the programs. We cannot replicate it perfectly as an in-person learning. The dual language program and pathway is one that we feel like would have to be adjusted or and not eliminated completely, I don't think, but we definitely have some struggles offering that program right now. The other programs, be it in the STEM Academy and things of that nature, we feel like we can offer online if a parent and family chooses that. Middle school will have all the options that they're used to, pre-AP and standard level classes and all the electives that are available online. And we do have a list that will be published of what that is. And in high school, it's the same way. There are some bullets on the right of this slide that we need to call your attention to. Dr. Rogers has already touched on a couple of them, but we are going to ask families to be enrolled in that program for a full grading period, and that they have an opportunity to opt out once they begin and decide to go one, and that would go one way or the other, either in person or virtual. The grading policy will be much different than it was in the spring. They will actually have grades that will follow the grading policy of the in-person learning. And so that will be a difference, and there will be expectations aligned out for our teachers and families on what the grading and feedback looks like. And I'd also like to say the attendance and truancy rules all apply as well. And that was one of the big things is students will have to engage every single day. And technology has been working with making sure that we will have enough devices for students if they opt this way. But it is going to be 4 to 6 hours probably minimum every day for our kids online. So that's the first one. The second one, much of those same rules apply, but when we looked at what could we offer and getting some advice from UIL and things of that nature, we believe that the whole school experience is more than just content online. And the school experience involves extracurricular, co-curricular things, and some of those electives are things that kids really get excited about. And so we feel like if we offer what we're calling a virtual plus, we would allow middle school students to participate in those UIL electives, which would be fine arts and athletics as well. In high school, we would expand that even more and allow them to take any electives that are not offered online. And so we believe by doing this, we would keep our students even more engaged than they normally would be and allow them the opportunities to be involved in some of those activities that make them future ready. And so those are kind of the two options that we're looking at. Logistically speaking, Virtual Plus offers some challenges for our campuses and our counseling department, but we believe it's a good option for some of our students and families.
And so a next step for this task force, TEA, as they are releasing guidelines, they will require us to complete a remote asynchronous plan attestation document. And of course, all that remote asynchronous means, we had it on that chart, is just that when you're in our virtual program, you're not going to be live with the teacher every single day. There will be a combination of times you're with the teacher and times that you're not. And so that's the remote asynchronous model. And we will be bringing that plan and attestation before you either in August or September, because it will require board action.
And I would just say, Board, on the Virtual Plus, where Dr. Thornell talked about, in middle school and high school, if they choose the Virtual Plus, the opportunity to do UIL electives, and then for high school students to pick any elective that is not required by TEA. There are some of our neighboring districts that are not doing any of that. In other words, you picked virtual, it's virtual. And then there are some that are like us, trying to find what fits and yet try to meet some of the needs of our students in other ways. We understand that they need to have some extracurricular. So anyway, we're trying to find the best of both worlds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thornell.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask Ms. Lewis and Mr. Kosh and Ms. Godby to come on up. So the next task force we're going to be discussing is, as Dr. Rogers said, what we referred to as the hybrid task force. These were also divided by level because we knew that implementing a hybrid model, which is a blend of students attending in person and remote, would have to be differentiated by elementary, middle, and high. So Ms. Godby led the elementary level, and online with us today is Angela Cortez from her group. Leanne Lewis led the middle school level, and online with us today is Kelly Knight from her group, and Mr. Kosh led the high school, and online with us today is Will Skelton from his group. And so, as I said, the charge to this group was to create alternative schedules, really, to look at a variety of things that are out there that could be used if a situation arose where limitations were placed on the percentage of students you could have in the building at any one time. We just were not for sure in June, would there be a mandate about you can only open up with 50% or 25% of students in the building, and we wanted to be prepared for that. So we called this a hybrid approach where students would be learning in person and remote away from the campus. Again, we're not using the word at home in that scenario either. We're using the word remote because you're coming to school. It's just the day you're not with us, you have different learning, and they'll talk about that. So as Dr. Rogers said, prior to the TEA guidance that came out late yesterday, we viewed the hybrid as our preferred contingency. So that's why we're calling it contingency A, as opposed to just a full shutdown closure of school, that any ability we can maintain to keep students coming to school in person is our best option. And so we felt it important to still discuss the work that they've done today. As I said, it will go into our emergency operations playbook for instructional continuity, and we will have all of this ready to go should we need to call on it if the situation changes. And so with that said, I think I'm turning it over to Ms. Lewis.
Good afternoon. So Dr. Rapp did mention our groups and the research that we all did in order to really look and determine what schedules and plans and models would be best for our district. And so we did decide on the 401 model, which is going to be up there in just a minute, I'm sure. But in the meantime, I wanted to share the models that we considered before we narrowed down the 4-1 hybrid. We talked about a half-day AM and PM where half the students would come in the morning, and then we would have a change during the lunch period, and the other half would come in the afternoon. We talked about an AB model as well, where actually students would alternate days. However, when they were actually on campus, they would stay in one location. There would not be a lot of movement. Another model that was considered was an AB rolling model where there was no remote learning at all that week, so it was just a continuous AB, AB, A, and then start the next week with a B. Another one was a 4-1 model with all students actually there at school for 4 days and then 1 day remote. So that one was considered. And then another one the elementary considered was a pre-K through second, because research talks about how that level really needs to be at school regularly for the reading and the development. So they would actually be in school every day. And then third through fifth would run an AB schedule to where they would alternate. But what we ultimately decided on to work for all 3 levels was the 4-1 hybrid schedule, which is here. Students would be organized in groups an AB group. We talked about dividing that by alphabet because we could do that in a way that we could align across all schools so that families that had students in multiple grade levels or at different levels, all their children could be at school at the same time. We also we also determined that on the days that, because we were going to do 4 days AB, and then on Wednesday we would actually have a remote learning day. However, we would have an opportunity for intervention groups, extracurricular fine arts, and the self-contained special ed students and the other groups listed there, which were dyslexia and MTA, would have the option on that remote day to attend as well and get that additional work or support or time at school. So the next slide, please.
Well, and I think it's important to say the Wednesdays, there was discussion of having that remote learning day on a Monday, a Wednesday, a Friday. Anyway, I'll turn that over to Ms. Godby to talk a little bit about.
I think that's still me,
that's
actually.
Still you. Okay.
This was just a 1 week or a 1 week schedule of what that might look like, and we did determine that Wednesday would be a good option just because it falls in the middle of the week and allowed for kids to be more frequently kind of spread out, so it's not 4 or 5 days not being in school. It also added for some additional cleaning. So that's what we landed on, was that Wednesday. So that's what it would actually look like.
And to add to that, on Wednesday, very few things happen after school that are with UIL on Wednesdays too. So it was a long discussion with all of us. The rationale for our recommendation for the AB model is because 50% of the students will be in person every day, and they would be able to maintain their schedule that they signed up for, or the master schedule that was created in elementary would follow. It would just be half and half at the same time. It allows students the opportunity to stay consistent with what they have on a daily basis. If we had high numbers of staff absent, because we only have half of the students there, we could combine some classes if we needed to. Allows for the transition back to in-person learning that minimizes the number of people in the building at one time. So we were thinking maybe we would ease back into, had TEA not changed everything yesterday just a little bit. But we were thinking we'd ease back into that. The remote learning day, Wednesday, also allows for the deep cleaning, as she said. The other thing that we would like to mention on the AB is it allowed all three of us to align so that the students with the same family members would be able to attend on the same days, keeping the older student at home when the younger ones might be at home.
Thanks, Rhonda. The next slide shows an example schedule for high school, and this is just a great example similar to others that all three task forces, elementary and middle school, created. And to me, it shows some advantages, and I know I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Kaj, but shows some advantages why I believe we need to seriously consider banking some minutes every day. And so I'm going to turn it to Jeff, our former LHS principal and now our Chief Executive Director of Student Services. So, Jeff.
If you notice, the extended time of the day allows for longer passing periods, which I think is going to be important for a staggered release from classrooms. Also for traffic flow, one-way hallways, which might require extra time for students to get from one part of the building to the other. The other thing to note on here is by banking minutes or extending the school day, it allows for an advisory period to also be grouped in there with the class, and that would be utilized at all three levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. And social emotional learning can take place there, some support there, some school-wide information can be shared during that additional time period. And another key component to having additional time in the school day would be the sanitation between lunches, whether we're delivering those into the classrooms or utilizing big spaces in the buildings to house students for lunch. In between lunches would allow time for sanitation and then once again, the staggered release time. So the extended time granted in the school day would allow for a lot of operational maneuvering to take place.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, so I'm going to switch out and ask Dr. Talbert to come on up, and we'll switch gears into special education. And again, we appreciate their work on that hybrid model, and I know one of the things that came up early from you all in at-home learning was having that emergency operations work ready to go. And so I'm proud of their work, and we have all these different things we can call upon when they're needed. All right, so Dr. Talbert led a group that really took a look at what do we need to do to ensure that we are protecting our self-contained students, staff, and our evaluators. And so she's going to talk to you about what they discussed.
Yeah, I'm just so appreciative of the administrators and the teachers that participated in the special education task force that developed a safe and responsive way to bring our students with disabilities, including the students that are most needy and benefited the least from, am I too loud?
No.
Benefited the least from the at-home learning. And so we're just so excited about the plans to return them back into in-person learning in the classrooms. And so with that said, while trying to follow all the public guidelines for safety, we recognize that there's some protective measures, including face coverings and social distancing, that's just not simply possible for some of our students, just based on their age and their cognitive levels and maybe their communication and sensory needs and even their social and emotional needs. And so our special ed teachers, especially in the self-contained classes, they have some unique challenges in the fact that, in a day-to-day routine way, they have to do activities that get them in close proximity to some of our students. And some of those activities involve toileting, feeding, self-care, and even behavior support, health services, and those types of things. So with that said, and all of those risk factors, our committee felt it was very important to ensure that our students and our staff have enhanced protective measures to prevent the spread of any diseases. And so with that said, we looked at additional face coverings. We looked at plastic dividers. We looked at protective clothing, and then some of those other measures that the committee felt was important. And we wanted to be sure that it provided the most flexibility for our teachers as they went through the various activities in that instructional day. Whether or not it was to do instruction or to do more of those self-care activities. And so we were proud of the results that came from our committee, and we're going to include that into a lot of the training in August.
So her group has operational guideline modifications as well, just like you heard from Ms. Clark about the groups that have done the differentiated level system. The self-contained settings modifications are not differentiated by level, but they are designed to be sure that we open our schools safely in those classrooms. And I failed to thank Ms. Rupert, Estella Rupert, who's online with us from Dr. Talbert's group.
And board, we have already, thanks to the work of this task force, already been ordering these additional PPE for our self-contained teachers in these classrooms, just to make sure we're ready. So
we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Talbert. So there's no doubt, we want to talk about our employees. I just can't thank our employees enough for just amazing work that they did this past spring. And, FYI, Sheila Smith, our Chief Executive Director of Employee Services, would be here, but she's on vacation. And so that leaves me to talk, so I'm sorry about that. But just a reminder, as I know all of us know, but maybe the public doesn't, we have 6,500 employees that serve our 52,000 students. And so for us to serve our students, we absolutely realize that we must also take care of our staff. So we'll certainly, as I mentioned earlier, provide a lot more details to our staff early next week regarding expectations. But in general, If employees have concerns about COVID-19 in their work situation, as we move forward, they need to talk with their supervisor and then to benefits office. So that's really, just in general how that will work. No matter what learning options we implement, except for shelter in place, something that might come from the governor, the following expectations will apply to staff. Since we will implement revised safety protocols, we do believe staff will be able to physically distance. We will provide, and they will wear face coverings, and we'll certainly limit their exposure to visitors. And we will provide additional PPE needed for some staff, like we talked about in self-contained classrooms and so on. We will expect a full work day, and they will work from campus in nearly every situation that will be required beginning this fall. Okay, so let's talk about my favorite topic, and that's calendar. So calendar, really there's three options. And when we sent the survey out to parents, we talked about those options, and we asked the parents, hey, would you want to extend the last day of school? Well, not many people like that option going into, do you want to just make no adjustments and think everything's going to work out great? I certainly hope that's the case. Or do we want to add minutes to the day, or just do it online? And like I said, and I did talk twice to my parent advisory group, which is about 35 parents from across our district. And they really felt like, when I discussed some of the results of the survey, and the survey questions, they felt like there were a lot of parents that felt like when we talked about adjusting or adding minutes to the day, we were talking about an hour or whatever, and not really, 20, 25 minutes. They absolutely, the majority of them believe that we should bank minutes, which we'll get into in just a second. So, speaking of banking minutes, there's really, and this is recommended from me. Now that doesn't mean that, but there's two options, and you have a handout that I know, board, is very hard to read, but please know we had about, thanks to the great work of Dr. Fitchie, we had about 8 to 10 options, and so we've narrowed it down to 5. And so what you have in front of you, board, is, of course, the current calendar for this next year, 2021. And you see we go to school in LISD 435 minutes a day. Now, I know you remember, but we need to make sure the public and our staff know we have to go to school 75,600 minutes in a year, all right, period. And so if you see in our current calendar, 435 minutes a day, that gives us 77,085 minutes. So we bank about 3 to 4 days in any given year in our current calendar. And Dr. Fitzhugh, help me if I misspeak here. So then we talked about, well, what happens if you just, the next column calendar ends at the end of, days at the end of the school year. So if we have to close for 2 weeks here in October or January, whatever, you just extend into June, all right? And if you notice, for that, only 19% of our parents really liked that. No, I'm sorry, that was staff. 25% of our parents liked that option. 19% of our staff. Then the third column is remote learning, and that is where we provide some type of learning for the time we're closed. But just a reminder, it will not look like this past spring. I mean, it will be much more rigorous, much more intense. Grades will count. I mean, it's not pass-fail. I mean, it's going to require a lot of time. And so you can see that that's the same calendar as what we have. And then we can do a couple of things with the fourth and fifth column. You see where we start out as a regular school year, 435 minutes, and we just picked that, oh, okay, at some point we have to make up time because we closed for a period of time. And so we just plugged in a number, 480 minutes a day. If we did that calendar, if we were closed and we did that calendar, we would be able to bank 15 days. And so if we had to close for 2 weeks, we'd have 5 extra days. If we had to close for 3 weeks, we'd have no extra days, but we wouldn't have to make it up. And we would not have to do remote learning during that time. Our whole premise on this is, once again, we believe students, for the most part, need in-person instruction. All right? The positive of banking time, too, which all of us like if we go through this year and we don't have any closures, shutdowns, is we could actually get out of school in mid-May. I believe, Dr. Fitzhugh, the earliest is either May 14th or 15th. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Anyway, that's that extended days, number one. And then you can see the last column is where we start the year banking minutes with 25. We just extend the school day 25 minutes for all levels. And so we, instead of going for 435 minutes a day, we go 460. I will tell you that's pretty common with most of our neighboring districts. We are one of the lowest as far as number of minutes per day. And so and if you look at the end of the year, if we don't have any closures, we will have banked 13 days. But if we had to close for 3 weeks, we could still end school, while a couple days later than we planned, we could still end school before Memorial Day on May 28th. So that's really our mindset behind that. We just know that at-home learning, and we just hope our parents and staff understand, at-home learning, like happened this past spring, which we're extremely proud of what we were able to pull off with very little notice and very little time to plan, is not what we're talking about with remote learning if we have to close. All right, so we'll come back to this discussion. I know it's a major discussion, and we certainly need your input on that. So I'm going to move on. Some other significant considerations. We talked already about the social emotional needs of our students. I'm extremely proud of our group that's been working on that. I will tell you that we will use a TEA recommended screener for our students to assess social emotional needs upon their return to school. We also will use an app on all of our iPads for students and even maybe staff to assess their needs related to social emotional, and that can be done even as much as daily. We have great curriculum for social emotional learning already. It's research-based. We have great student support programs with things like Second Step, Everfee, Choices 360, Texas OnCourse for our 6th through 12th graders. We have these great videos, which I know all of our board and others have seen, Ask an Expert, family centers with free counseling for students and families. We have staff support. All of our staff will receive training on trauma-informed classrooms. This before school starts. We will and do already offer counseling support, but we will ramp that up for our staff, and we'll certainly have ongoing communication regarding the mental health of our staff. Transportation. Our new contractor, Texas Central's ready. We have received, as you're aware of, board, our 285 new buses. The reason I had this as a discussion point, though, is prior to yesterday's TEA announcement, we were very concerned that there might be guidance that we could not put a full load of students on a bus. Well, that's not the guidance from TEA. They are not restricting that as far as we were thinking we were probably going to have to discuss with you, what if we had to limit it to 50% capacity or ridership on a bus? Would we need to restrict and change the 2 mile distance from school to 2.5 miles or 3 miles? How are we going to get to have to pick who gets to ride the bus and who doesn't according to who's eligible. But that's not, at least at this time, not an issue for us. Some of the guidance we did get yesterday from TEA was every student, as they get on the bus, will be given hand sanitizer. Every bus will be disinfected after every route. And so those are things that some of that we were already planning, but that is about transportation. Our technology department, you talk about folks that have just gone above and beyond for a long time ever since this thing hit. But Brian Kobeck and his group, we know that according to the number of parents that request virtual learning and some of the other things that while we have a lot of devices, we may not have enough. And we also certainly know that there are access issues regarding internet connectivity that we're going to have to help address for some of our families. Child nutrition, of course, we've had a long-time relationship with Airmark, a national company. They have incredible resources, and they have done incredible amount of planning for various contingencies, including the increased cafeteria safety, the way we lay out tables in the cafeteria, sanitizer, disinfection, safety of meals using disposable service, grab-and-go menu, sanitizer, along with some flexible service, staggering our service, classroom deliveries, combination. I mean, we have a lot of different scenarios that we have planned for, thanks to the great work of Aramark. And then last but not least, our custodial group, which is we contract with another national company, ABM. They also have incredible resources. They've done a lot of great planning. They have recently also developed an enhanced clean program that increases the scope of cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting with frequent high-touch disinfection and a broader disinfection utilizing an electrostatic sprayers where we would also hire, and of course it's going to cost the district, and we'll talk about that later, about 70 plus more staff to make sure that we have this enhanced cleaning done. So with that, I think I do want to put this on your radar, and I greatly appreciate that the board has agreed to have another special board meeting next Tuesday just to finalize some of these additional operational costs that are new, but just to put it on and to explain to folks, we know that whatever our full-time virtual, that's going to cost us to purchase some additional learning and instructional resources, and I'm talking about millions of dollars. I just mentioned some of the things about increased custodial costs, the purchase of additional PPE. You heard Dr. Talbert talk about what we already have purchased for our self-contained, and we'll continue to make sure that they have all types of additional PPE that most teachers won't have. I am grateful to TEA for the PPE that they are providing. They're providing over 460,000 disposable student and adult masks to us, 115,000 reusable student and adult masks, 195,000 gloves, 5,400 gallons of hand sanitizer, and 5,700 plus face shields. I wish that would be enough, but that's just a drop in the bucket. And so we know we're going to have to supplement what TEA provides, and we've already begun doing so. We also know that we're going to need to purchase, and we've already done so for our self-contained special ed classrooms, but even for elementary classrooms, some type of plexiglass desk shield clear partitions. And I'm actually going to move to show and tell for a second. Partitions such as this that students at their desk would have, something like as simple as this. Partitions that would attach via Velcro to a desk like this, or hard plexiglass partitions for a teacher as they have guided reading at their table or whatever. So all different kinds of things, of course, we're investigating, and we know we're going to have to purchase something similar to these and other products. So, okay. Just a second. We get bombarded, of course, as you can imagine, by companies wanting to sell things. So, increased personnel cost. We know that, substitutes are also leery about returning to work, and so we're going to have to address those issues. Some additional coverage needs, technology. I already mentioned some costs that we're probably going to have to incur to make sure we can serve all of our students. And then there's some unknown, and certainly I know the board understands that. So it's about that time. Just a reminder for everyone, this need to be flexible and nimble. I wish I could say that what we are planning for 5 weeks from today, which is August the 12th, the first day of school, is going to be exactly the way we hope. But we know that the situation is very fluid. So we want to talk about calendar adjustments, and then I do want to put these timelines in front of you. July 13th, by July 13th, we're going to have parent and staff communication to recap today's meeting and also include, if we started today, what that mitigation level would be. July 14th, as the board already knows, we have another special board meeting to talk about budget action items. July 15th is when we're going to ask our parents to begin the selection process of what learning option they want for their children. And then if there are any different decisions we have to make regarding transportation, ridership, and routes, the deadline for that is 3 weeks prior to the start of school, which is July 22nd. So with that, I'm going to just ask that board that you refer to your handout on the calendar, and really that's probably the first discussion we need to have, Ms. Sells, is about the calendar.
Okay. Do you want each board member to ask questions of the calendar, or do you want opinion, comments?
I think any
Above?
of the above, because there needs to be great discussion, questions, because ultimately the board needs to decide what calendar. I will tell you, board, where there's some districts thinking of pushing the start of school back, I've really contemplated, and we've had great discussion about that, not starting on August 12th, starting on August 19th. Some are talking about starting school September 1, so on. When I was on the call with Denton County Health Director Dr. Richardson on Monday with a lot of other folks, I was the first person to get to ask him a question. And his point was, really, Dr. Rogers, if you're planning for more than 2 weeks out, you're really, he didn't say it this way, but you're sort of spitting in the wind. And so I just see the calendar as I would rather get it started, bank some minutes, and be ready to be flexible and nimble if we have to close or do some other contingency plan than to keep pushing it back. If we push back the start of school and we have to have an extended close, you either have to have a bunch of minutes banked, or you go to remote learning, or you cannot finish school before Memorial Day. So that's the gamble that you take by pushing the start of school back. Now, the rationale some of the districts are using is, hey, we're going to go ahead and have our teachers report at the same time as normal and use that time for additional training. I get that rationale, but if we had to close school for remote learning or whatever, we would need a couple of days to train anyway, and so I just think we need to seriously consider banking some minutes. But
okay, let's start with Ms. Cox.
I just want to start off by giving a huge thank you, Dr. Rogers, to you personally for your leadership. To the staff in this room, to the teachers who did the online learning this summer, it has been hard. And I know it's been challenging for each of you, but I just want to give personal appreciation. I think this has been a well thought out process, and I just want to thank every single person in this room, the staff, teachers, everybody out there, the parents who participated in the surveys, the comments they've made. This is a shared effort, and we're going to make the best decision for our kids so they, as Ms. Hassett said in her prayer, to get a good education. So thank you for that. My personal opinion would be to, yes, I think we should bank some minutes. I think kids are ready to start school. We don't know what the pandemic is going to look like, but I think it's a good start. My question is, though, is to have an understanding. So this is just if we have to, the extra minutes would be if we have to do that. It's not, we're going to have the normal schedule unless we have to revert to this. Is that what this you're saying?
And I'm going to ask Dr. Fitzhugh to come up too, since she's the master of the calendar. But what you're asking, I think, Ms. Cox, is the fourth column, the extended days, number 1, where you start off with 435 minutes, but then you notice about 9 weeks into it, we jump to 480, and that is, we start regular. I mean, Sarah, can you explain that?
So there were a couple of options that we contemplated when we were developing these, and one of them is we could start the 9 weeks with the regular and then bump up. Or if we start at the beginning of the school year, you start banking minutes immediately. So no matter when the closure happens, you already have some stored up and you're ready to go. So I think depending on the option and what y'all choose, the 435 or the 460 option there would be that we start with an extended time period at the beginning. That allows us to bank enough minutes to have 12 days worth-ish if we start then. If we went to a later one and started at 9 weeks in, then we would go to that 480 to get the 15 days.
So the negative of waiting to start banking minutes until the second 9 weeks is we have to go up to 480 to make sure we have enough. And this is all based on the premise that if we have to go into closure, we're not going to provide any remote learning. We're just going to be closed because we believe that, hey, we need to get kids back in person for the best learning, not remote. So
that's what I have an issue with.
Okay.
I do not want to stop education. So I would not want a calendar that we stop education for under any circumstance. I think kids need to continue learning, or I think it will be a struggle for teachers coming back trying to reiterate that teaching. So I don't want to stop education.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're okay with banking some minutes, but if we have to close for an extended period of time, more than a week or whatever, you'd want some type of remote learning.
Yes.
Okay. That's,
yes.
I
don't know which one of those that is, but
that's a little bit of a combo, but
it's not.
We're good with combinations. So
sorry.
That's all right.
Ms. Lasan?
So I do want to reiterate what Ms. Cox said. I mean, the amount of work that I know you guys have done, and I've talked with a few staff members that have been doing it, it just blows my mind, and how many different scenarios you have to take into, and data points from here and there and everywhere, and it does not go unnoticed, and we are so grateful to all the work that you guys have done. And I know this has been a hard summer, and just thank you so much for everything that you have done. As far as the calendar goes, my favorite is the last one, the extended school days number 2, because I say if we're going to start banking minutes, let's just start from the beginning and get everybody used to it. I think that's the easiest thing. And then I kind of disagree with Ms. Cox as far as the going back and forth between in-person and remote, just because I think, switching back and forth, I don't think it's going to be super easy, because from what I understand, you guys are going to have to buy, new curriculum, correct, for this remote learning, and, it'll be a flip-flop. So I just don't think it'll be all that seamless. That's just my thought.
Yeah, Ms. Lasan, you are correct that it won't be seamless, but remember, too, that our sort of our keywords are flexible and nimble. So
Yes,
we know
absolutely.
that no matter what we plan today, we're probably going to have to modify it. We're probably, I know the board and all of us will have that discussion whenever, whenever there is a closure, whatever. We've got to be prepared for all scenarios, and we will be. I just need parents, the struggle that parents had, even when we were closed and we had very minimal expectations, a couple of hours a day, parents with multiple children and all this, and our teachers trying to struggle with not only teaching, but also their own families. It was tough, and so we felt like maybe we just shut down and then get back and use our banked minutes and go from there. Now, all of this is out the window if we also have 4 bad weather days, and there's all kinds of scenarios that can pop up. But
At any rate, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Is the
okay,
last
so
one.
thank you.
Ms. Hassett?
I'd also like to thank staff. Y'all have done a yeoman's work. It's just amazing what you've done to ensure learning for our students and safety for our staff, and it's greatly appreciated. I would totally agree with Ms. Cox. I like banking minutes mainly because of high school and middle school, we need the extra time in order to get kids in and out safely, so we'll need that, but that's not really instructional time in the middle school and high school levels. And so if we're gone remote, if we've shut down for more than a week, then I definitely think we need learning in high school with our accelerated block. If we're out for 1 week, that's 2 weeks. If we're out for 2 weeks, that's 4 weeks. So I just don't think we can afford not to do remote learning if we're out for more than 1 week.
Thank you.
Ms. Prosnick?
I really want to congratulate staff for showing what public education can do. So well done. I really appreciate the work and how you all adapted to the situation we're in. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
When we talk about remote learning and we're talking about adding minutes, I have concerns with, and it will be the parent's choice to do this, I want to make that clear as well, but how much screen time are we talking for a first grader or even a fourth grader? How much screen time are we talking when we're talking about adding these minutes? What does that look like?
So on the adding of the minutes for the calendar, that really wouldn't add, it would just add minutes to our in-person schedule.
So it has nothing to do with
Right.
Okay.
So the virtual program that they're looking at, I mean, they're taking that into account these people that do instructional resources for virtual learning, they do consider those kinds of things. What's developmentally appropriate? I know that they've had rigorous conversation about that for sure, but of course the parents opting for that as well, to your point.
Right.
But these additional minutes really would be about the in-person schooling.
So, I'm sorry. And so how does that affect the virtual plus? I guess I should have been a little bit more specific then. How do these minutes of instruction affect the virtual plus?
So our virtual plus kids that have their schedule done for them that will come to school for that elective or whatever, they will come. I mean, the time frame of school, if it's extended a little bit, maybe my third period class happens a little later than I originally thought it was going to. But if you opt for that right from the start, everybody knows that schedule right from the beginning. Yeah. As y'all said, with the other calendar, you switch midstream, then you have to make changes for that.
It would be similar, Ms. Prosnick, to, we have a few students that can't get the elective they want at one high school and they go to another high school, or our students that double block and go to our career center. I mean, it'd be sort of similar to that as far as their schedule.
I agree with Ms. Hassett and Ms. Cox that if we're out for more than a week, I think it's a lost opportunity. And since we will be up and running and have the virtual learning available, I definitely think that we have that option. I will say I really hope that in our professional development we are helping all of our teachers become better virtual teachers. And I also hope that we will provide some supports for those who do choose virtual at home for parents because it's going to be very different than it was in the spring. And if that is a choice that they make for their student, I hope that we are going to be providing some of those supports so that they can actually be a much better support for their student. I believe in banking from the beginning because I think it gives us an opportunity, God willing, at the end of the first semester to look at what that second semester can bring. Because if we don't use any of those banked, if we don't use them, or if we use all 3 weeks in that first semester, I think then that we have an opportunity to then reset and perhaps unfortunately have a longer day even in the spring. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
So your choice was the
Was
380?
bank some minutes and
Bank
then
from the very
remote
beginning.
if over a week, which
But
I'm going to circle
You
back.
didn't say three. I want to make sure
Sure.
you weren't clear on the 460 or the 480.
No, 460, I said from the very,
Okay.
from the very
Okay,
beginning,
that's-
day
okay.
one.
And I'm
I
going to
missed the
circle
460.
back around on the minutes with
Yeah.
Dr. Fitzhugh in a minute if we're going to go remote after a week. So anyway,
Thank you. I was trying to keep tallies,
Sorry.
and somehow I just
I'm
missed it.
keeping tabs.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So I am.
Mr. Miller?
Oh, go. Yes,
Mr.
Tracy.
Miller.
And I have Tracy.
Hey, y'all. Hey, great work, as already been said. A lot of work, and I appreciate what staff has done. I think, I just pinged Brian. We have a lot of people that are watching this video, and I think that just as a matter of clarity, because I'm going to talk about the calendar in a second, the board really has no authority in going back to school. That is delegated to the superintendent. But what the board does have is the full accountability of the instruction and learning of the students. And so Marath doesn't replace superintendents. He does replace school boards. And we see that in different cases where he intervenes. So I appreciate the collaboration on this. And I'll talk to where we might have a role in the decision in a second. I think you've outlined it, Dr. Rogers. Just a couple things. One is, to be clear, staff is going to be on campus 5 days a week in any period, right?
Yeah, I think, they haven't totally fleshed out, Mr. Miller, and jump in and correct me, Dr. Rapp, but Dr. Thornell's group, who worked on the virtual part of it in his task force, hasn't totally fleshed out the remote learning part. And so I would not say that staff would be at school during remote learning. Is that fair to say, Dr. Rapp?
I think just still under discussion,
Yeah.
absolutely,
So-
for those teachers doing the virtual.
Yeah. That part of our model has not totally been fleshed out. It will be, but and we're working on it. So anyway.
And I think that, maybe further definition just for clarity around virtual versus online learning, they can be a bit confusing as it relates to their definition. People will think that they're the same. And really here we're not talking about the same thing when we talk about virtual learning versus online, correct?
You are absolutely correct.
Okay. So really, we're going back to school, but students are, from an educational perspective, I'll talk about extracurriculars in a second, but from an educational perspective, going back to school, if a parent selects that option, their child will really only be going back to school for 2 days a week.
No.
Why is that?
Why?
No.
If they're on an AB, are they?
No, AB is not that is not an option. Our parents are going to have one of two choices, either in person or full-time virtual.
Okay, and in person, the students would go 5 days a week?
5 days a week.
Got it. I'm for the banking of the minutes early, but I agree with Mrs. Cox, and this is where I think the board's accountability as it relates to student achievement and instruction comes in. I think that anytime we go on spring break or have a Christmas break or any extended break, we see a need for remediation. In fact, we've intentionally moved our calendar around to make sure that a semester ends prior to a significant break, because when we used to have it that we would come back from spring break and have 2 weeks before STAR testing or any other type of summative test, it wasn't necessarily advantageous. So I would lean in the direction of, in the event that we, as a result of the pandemic, had to go into stay-at-home type orders, that we continue providing instruction. I think there's, we could go into the social-emotional piece, the structure, the benefit to the students long-term. I would lean in that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
And then I would ask two other questions. One is, what are we doing? I guess they would have to go on campus. So newcomers, they come from other countries. The group of, we have these classes, especially at the high school level, all newcomers, they're all ESL. It could be 4 or 5 different languages. How are we going to accommodate that?
Yeah, let me, Mr. Miller, let's come back to other questions, because I know the board has a lot of other questions about various topics. I'd like to keep this discussion just on calendar, and then we'll come back around to that if that's okay.
Do you have anything additional, Mr. Miller, on the calendar?
No.
Okay.
Doesn't he need to choose?
Do you need to, are you okay
I got
banking?
that he said bank and remote after 1 week. So I was listening.
And I just want to make sure that I'm in favor of banking. I also would like to see the 460. I think that changing, even after 9 weeks, a routine that has usually not, for my kids, we had to get back into that routine, and it took more than a day or two. And so I think changing midstream, even after the first 9 weeks, will be more difficult than if we bank fewer minutes from the get-go. And I think that it would be advantageous to our families who are trying to make plans for additional childcare before and after, that we're not jumping all over the place about that. I also agree that if we go into a order of not meeting in person, we saw very quickly this last spring where 1 week turned into 2 weeks, that turned into 9 weeks. And I think that not being ready to do remote learning in that case only puts us behind the 8 ball. And because I honestly don't see where we could close a week, come back a week, close a week, come back a week. I just, in my head, in scenarios, seeing what other states do, hopefully we don't have to do that at all. But in the case that we are closed, I foresee more of a closure to a natural break. And I think, unfortunately, our natural break, the last 9 weeks, was the end of the 9 weeks. I mean, and I think that was unfortunate for some of our students. But I am thankful to, just to reiterate, for the work, not only that was done in the spring, but the work that has been done through the summer. I am constantly amazed when I see somebody who I believe is a total morning person send me an email at 12:15 at night, that I understand that the work continues, and it is something that you never leave in this building if you have come to this building for work, that you are taking it home, and that your mind is constantly thinking and processing and making plans for what is best for our students and for our community in general. And so the 460, I'm banked. I do want to, though, say when we are processing those surveys, because the virtual will be very different from the remote, and not everybody's going to be listening to this and hearing these words, that when we put out that parent survey, that we are very clear that the virtual learning that will be occurring in the fall is not the at-home learning that we were doing in the spring. So I want that very clear. I don't want emails after 2 weeks saying, well, this is so different than what we did in the spring. I want to make sure that we are very clear. So in making those choices and these minutes and all this stuff, we're just clear about that.
Yeah,
from the
Ms.
get-go.
Sells, we will make it clear. We actually did our best to provide context context even in the survey, because we talked about 6 hours and so on, even for the parent survey that we provided. But let me circle back around just for some clarification. So, Ms. Cox, I got your combo about banks of minutes and remote. Are you okay with what they said about remote after 1 week?
Yes.
Okay, so that at least, and then Ms. Lasan, you got the bank minutes. Are you okay with the remote after 1 week?
Yes, I am, and I kind of, thinking about it a little bit, it's my personal belief that if they do, it's kind of like what Ms. Sells was saying, that if they do close us down because of COVID, I think it will be longer than 2 weeks anyway, and so we will your other scenarios that you've already got in place will kind of come in anyway, so yeah.
So let me ask another question, and I've asked Dr. Fitzhugh to get her handy-dandy computer that created all these different charts. We put in there just arbitrarily. Initially, we had 35 minutes extra, so 470. But then we, asked her to carve it down to 460. I guess my question to the board is, and Sarah, you can, give me your input. Is there a need to? While I like the additional 25 for some of the reasons that Jeff Kaj and we've discussed, is there a reason to have it 25 more minutes if we're going to go remote after a week, is my question. Does that make sense? So what are your thoughts? I mean, what if we made it 20? And I'm not suggesting, I just want to make sure the board understands. I think there is some flexibility in that.
So real quickly, if we made it 20 versus the 25, you would bank about 12 days. Now that's real quick math there, but you would bank about 12 days, so it's 1 day different, rolling it back 5 minutes. If we went to remote learning, we would still be able to count, if TA would allow us to count that, we would be able to count that as instructional, and so those minutes would still count in our calendar.
Right.
And so it would still go towards our total minutes for the year. If we took time off to be planning or getting teachers ready or whatever, if we are not providing instruction, those minutes would not count. So it's kind of this game of, are we teaching or not, and do we count the minutes or not, is kind of where you would be strategizing and playing around.
Okay. So I'm not trying to muddy the water, but I just wanted to make sure, when we put out there 25 minutes, we weren't saying, bank and remote. So if you wanted to decrease the number of minutes, which I'm not suggesting, I just want to make sure y'all understand that is an option that y'all have.
It's 1 day. That's
One
what
day.
you just said, so I don't think it matters. I mean,
Okay.
right,
And I really
1 day.
think 25 minutes is, not a great extension of the day. And I do need to make it clear to parents and to staff that we're not going to extend the school day by changing the start times in the morning. All right, everything will be at the end of the day.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Well, and for me, I think that 25 minutes in the day, it also allows us that flexibility. If we get in there and we see that the time for cleaning, the time for passing is not sufficient as to what we thought, we would have that flexibility within that school day to flex ourselves. And if we reduce that, then we lose even that ability. Yes, Ms. Cox?
Just a clarifying question, too. So for the STEM Academy kids that are going that are already extending, is that another 25 minutes on top of the extension that are already going?
No.
Okay, because
No,
that's
and
a
that
long
was
day.
a question that we
Okay.
discussed, and so that's a great
Just want
question.
to clarify that.
Yeah, so now, of course, we just need to make everyone a STEM academy. I'm teasing, of course, but.
Okay.
Any questions about that? Any more questions on the calendar?
Mr. Miller, I hear you.
Yeah. So I appreciate those perspectives. I would suggest that I disagree with anything that would move to shut down for a week. I can understand. I mean, I think in business continuity planning, you don't expect a week gap in continuity. And I think it's in the best interest of our overall academic achievement, because remember, those that are going to suffer are really those that need the instruction the most. So if we went into a shutdown because it was required of us, that could happen really 3 or 4 times throughout the year. And under a provision like this, and while I know that we wouldn't have the minutes, I mean, technically speaking, if we use the philosophy, we could shut down a week here and a week there, et cetera, multiple times. And again, I know you'll say that we wouldn't have the minutes to do that. Just seems to me that the best thing to do would be to we could bank the minutes and use them on the back end if we have to, or get some days off, but that we would continue the learning process in a remote environment similar to what we attempted to do previously.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, so I've got just a few comments, and then we're going to open it up for more questions. So I just want to remind folks, much of what we've discussed today is tentative, could certainly change. Remember, I gave you that TEA disclaimer. So I know that frustrates many people, because it frustrates me too. Every time we answer one question, it seems to lead to about 5 new questions, and I get that. That's the way this has been ever since COVID-19, with all the various scenarios that we've had to plan for. This is my 35th year in LISD, so please know we have the start of school down pretty pat, all right? But that's certainly not the case in 2020, because 2020 is like nothing we've ever seen before. It's certainly not a typical school year. I just want to refer us back to our guiding principles for reopening. We will provide the safest learning and working environments possible. We will continue to depend on our medical experts. We will work diligently to ensure all students receive instruction that meets our mission and vision with the necessary supports. We will give choice to families when we can. We will provide training and support to our staff, and we will continue to communicate proactively. We are absolutely going to continue seeking the input of our students, parents, families, and staff. And I just thank everyone for their patience and grace during this time. LISD has always and will continue to be here to serve. And I also appreciate our board for their hard work and support during COVID-19. I truly do believe we can do this. And so with that, I'm going to move to the slide about questions. So here we go.
And Dr. Rogers, it is 2:07, and I know we talked about previously before the meeting started.
I'm good.
Are you good? Okay, I just wanted to check.
I'll let you know if I need a break.
Okay, let's start with Ms. Lasan, and this you can open up. I would ask that if you have a plethora of questions, that maybe you limit it to 2 or 3 at the beginning to give everybody an opportunity, and then we can move forward, and then we'll move back. We'll circle back around to you. So.
Absolutely. I think if we all probably have millions of questions, so it might behoove us to email them later on. But I do have really just 2 off the top right now. So let's say, and I guess mostly I was thinking of elementary school kids. Let's say they do virtual learning. That's what they decide to do. You know, one of the most exciting things for an elementary school kid is finding out who their teacher is. So how will that look? Will they have a teacher? Will they kind of be part of another class? Like how's that going to look?
So we're still really discussing how we would staff the virtual learning program. The most important information we need first is going to be for parents to complete that preference form, because that really is what we will need to adequately determine the staffing. Dr. Thornell and his group have talked about a job description for a virtual teacher, speaking to the point of training and sending the important message that this is different and you need to be interested in this type of learning. As we've said, teachers, many of them got into this obviously to be in front of kids face to face. So after we know the preferences and how much staffing we need, and we would be able to launch a semi-application process of sorts, then we would hire teachers for the students by grade level, and still under discussion with Dr. Rogers, obviously, about numbers of students they would serve at one time in the virtual program, and the students would still belong to their physical campus. TEA's made that clear in their guidance, but they would also belong to what I'm thinking of in my head as a virtual campus, and technology's working with Dr. Thornell on setting up another version of that in Skyward, because you've got to have a way to communicate with families through Skylerts and things of that nature, just as they would about things that were happening on a home campus. So.
Well, and I think it's also important, Board, to understand that, 23% of our parents said they would prefer virtual. So for us, that's 10,000 kids. I mean, so we're going to have campuses within campuses. We're going to have to shift administrators that they are the administrator for that. I mean, if you think of a high school and they have 10 English teachers, then at least 2 of those English teachers are about to become virtual English teachers. I mean, that's the way this is going to work. And so we still have a lot of detail to work out. Luckily, school's not starting tomorrow, but I promise you we will have it worked out. But it all greatly depends on our parents submitting those selection forms.
The other thing that makes me think and kind of worry about a little is, I know we've said that they're locked in for 9 weeks if they want to go virtual. Well, let's say we have who knows? We don't know what's happening, 2 weeks from now with all this stuff. So let's say we have a mass exodus back into the classroom, I mean, and then we have all these teachers who are virtual teachers. I don't know. It just blows my mind to think about all that.
Yeah.
There is no doubt, Ms. Lasan, it is some logistical work to be done, which is why we're requiring not only that a parent, once they make that choice, they're in that virtual learning option for 9 weeks, a grading period, and they have to give us 2 weeks notice, because we're going to need some turnaround time as we have to shift those students and make sure their schedule's right and so on.
I just hope people will think about that. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, talking about the models where kids can come for electives in high school and stuff. I'm assuming that or does it, is that Career Center electives as well? Will that include the Career Center electives? It will?
Yes, because a Career Center elective wouldn't be an elective that we could offer in our virtual platform.
Right.
So
Some of them are offered in Edgenuity match to match, but some of them are not.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hassett? I did have a question on the parent selection. You said that you were going to start polling parents to make their final selection on July 15th, but TA has given guidance that we can't enforce that until 2 weeks before.
That's correct. It's not their final selection. They can change it up until 2 weeks before school starts. That's certainly TA has given us that great guidance, and that's fine. But we need to know at least what they're leaning towards well before 2 weeks before school starts. So we're going to make it clear on our forms that, hey, parents, make the selection. You can certainly change it. We need to know if you're changing it. If we don't hear from you, that's what we're going to provide your kid.
Okay. And then based on that, you said you're going to finalize staffing. So if they get 2 weeks to decide, how are you going to?
I'm just going to refer to our flexible and nimble. We're going to have to be ready to change, and we'll make that clear. I mean, our teachers are guaranteed that they have a job to teach. They're not guaranteed whether or not it's virtual or in person. And so, these folks that we hope to make the right fit and put them virtual, they'll understand it's still based on numbers. And, the sad part about this, and y'all understand, it's never going to be a perfect 22, right. And so I shift a teacher. It's just not going to work that way. The math is not going to work that way, and so
because the district is too large, we'll have some kids in this elementary school and some kids in that elementary school.
That's absolutely right. Very.
Teachers might not know until close to August what their final position will be, and so we'll have to all be patient.
Or where their students are coming from. That's absolutely right. Thanks to TEA's rules.
Right. Okay, another question I had on our self-contained students, will those kids be coming to campus, or will they be given? They'll be given the option, but
in the virtual learning.
Yeah, I mean,
if they're choosing virtual.
Some of those students, how would we do some of the self-contained? Would most of those students just be coming to campus
So, Dr. Talbert, we were talking about that earlier. Do you want to come up here and share with them what you were sharing with me?
Clean off your mic before you.
Yeah, wipe your mic.
Did
down
you hear the
first.
question, Kathy? Okay.
I'm just wondering about the students who.
Lori will do it for you. We'll do that again. Okay.
I was getting directions to clean the mic.
Right.
Off of
Our parents who have a child with a disability, they have the same choices, whether
Absolutely.
to go the virtual route or, the in-person. And so we believe that the learning is better in person. We can provide better quality and more of the necessary related services in person, which is difficult to provide virtually. And so while the parents have a choice, if they choose that, we'll definitely get an art committee together to determine, what it would have looked like if you would have picked in person, but this is what we can provide virtually to the best we can.
Okay. The one other question I'll ask right now before I pass the mic. So some of our students and parents will be choosing to homeschool or go somewhere else for this year. And normally our routine is that we test the students to make sure that when they're entering the school, they're placed back in the appropriate place within LIC. How on earth are we going to accomplish that next year if we have 25% of the students, a large chunk of our students who possibly will homeschool, and how are we going to tell our parents what the procedure will be when they re-enter?
We are, and actually Amanda Brim and I have discussed that we will do an educational piece for our parents as they make these choices. Not that they don't have the right to make that choice, but what are the criteria for re-entering and the testing and so on, just to where they know up front when you make that choice, here's the issues that you're going to face, not only entering LISD, but re-entering any public school entity.
So
and
you're
so
going
we
to
will
include
do a
that
job.
on the July 15th?
I don't
next
know,
parent survey?
Amanda, are we planning to do that as part, well, really Brian's group?
It might determine what a parent picks early on if they know what's going to be happening with their child if they choose not to re-enroll right now. I think it's important that we
We'll do our best to make sure. We can't prevent parents, of course, from making the choice of
I just wanted to
homeschool, and
give
I
them
know
all
you're
of the
not suggesting that, and we're not trying to be difficult, but there are criteria that they have to meet when they re-enter our system, particularly at transition grades. So we'll certainly follow that policy. I don't want to worry too much about a year from now. I'm trying to get to August, but I certainly understand your concern. I think you can go, Dr. Calvert.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Calvert.
At least for now. Thank you.
Oh, no, my question
Okay,
might bring
well,
you right
don't run.
My question is how there were some concerns with our at-home learning, that some of our students that are on IEPs and 504s, that some of their needs weren't necessarily met in the spring. And so if a parent chooses virtual, I know we do it in the classroom, but if a parent chooses the virtual learning, what have we changed or pivoted from what we did in the spring for the fall?
So some of that has happened in the conversations with Dr. Thornell's committee. So Dr. Talbert had special ed representation on Dr. Thornell's group that's researching the learning resources and the different platforms. Now, again, just like we've said all along, the in-person offering, the virtual learning program cannot replicate the in-person, but they are taking into account what kind of platform, what kind of supports are needed if I'm choosing the virtual learning. But again, that would be an ARD committee conversation about here are the differences that are going to exist if you choose virtual learning.
And I think there are.
My question, does choosing virtual learning trigger an ARD meeting?
Right. I believe that it will, because it's not going to be the same as that continuity plan for services, which was just a temporary plan to get us through the crisis situation. And so what we'd want to do is to be able to have an ARD to discuss the students' presence levels and to determine, what supports and changes are necessary, for that virtual option that the parents are choosing.
So then, to me, that's the other logistical part of this conversation, because ARD meetings are not 10 minutes, in fact. And so
Yeah, I promise you,
it's
Dr.
just going to
Talbot
be
knows.
it's going to be a little bit, I just starting to spin my wheels on that,
And we don't have it separated on the survey, Ms. Prosnick, which of these, were special ed parents or not. I truly believe, though, and maybe it's this optimist in me, but I truly believe most special needs parents are going to, if at all possible, want their kid to receive in person. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I've heard that many of our parents are really excited about the opportunity for their kids to get back in the schools with that in-person learning, and our staff is just, ready to receive them. And so, while they have the virtual choice, and we will work closely with our families that choose that to be sure that we provide that free and appropriate public education in that platform, we don't think it's going to replace the in-person instruction and the quality that you get, in person in the classes.
And I would say that definitely makes this situation different than obviously when we were mandated full closed. Right. There were no choices. And so parents, were very gracious overall, I believe, about the continuity plans and understanding. But in this case, they will have a choice, and then it will be part of their decision on if I'm choosing this, I know what I'm getting when I choose it.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is that WebEx meetings, that has helped those ARD meetings be way more efficient, and the parents have responded positively to that, not having to leave work, and it's been a time saver. But we still offer, in-person ARD meetings for those that prefer it.
No, I agree. I think that WebEx has absolutely helped expedite that, especially in the scheduling. So I'm done with special
Okay,
ed.
thank you.
My next question, it does kind of center more on the virtual learning,
Sure.
which is, how does that look for our students that are in the Collegiate Academy? How does that look for students that are in programs such as the Spanish Immersion at 2 of our elementary schools? I know that we said that the, oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of it. The dual language program would probably not work real well on the virtual platform. But what about, and I'm assuming that the STEM would work on virtual. What about the collegiate and the?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Dr. Thornell to come on up, because those are all the conversations they've been having for sure.
I have no doubt that you all have not had these conversations.
And
I just want it spoken into
dual
the world.
credit is one of those things that is offered and still, obviously our college partners, a lot of the Collegiate Academy courses will be able to be taken through, however, College is offering them online. So that really is still a possibility for them to do those classes, just like the Virtual Plus if I wanted to come in person and do an elective.
And
But in
Dr.
terms of
Thornell,
the dual language and Spanish immersion, there has been
will you go
a lot
ahead
of
and clean
discussion
your
there.
mic? I want to clean, please. It's making me nervous.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
All right.
Dual
There were a
language,
couple different questions
Spanish
in there.
immersion.
Let me make sure I'm on the right one. The Spanish immersion, when the kids go up to middle school or when they take the Spanish class.
Spanish immersion we have 2 elementary schools
Yes, ma'am.
that offer Spanish immersion. I want to know what it looks like at those elementary schools
We are-
and then those all the way up.
We're trying to make sure that they can offer those Spanish classes online. Don't have a guarantee for you yet, but that was a discussion we had even yesterday. So I think we will have an option there. Next part. What's the next one?
I had asked about the dual language.
Yes.
And that was presented that it is probably not probable.
We don't feel like we have a good alternative right now, or a good program that would allow those kids to, in a curriculum that we would feel comfortable with on dual language. And so we know that that's a difficult choice, and there are some tough ones here. But after after many hours of reviewing different programs and everything, that is just one that's we found is very difficult to offer.
So in terms of just verifying the language there, because he's still adjusting to the lingo.
Not saying that correctly.
The Spanish immersion and dual language at elementary both fall into that scenario where there's not a good corollary for the Spanish language arts portion of how that would happen through a virtual learning program. The middle school students would be able to still continue their Spanish learning online.
Yes, they would.
Yeah, because they're,
Sorry,
they're two,
sorry,
no,
yes,
you're
we're going
fine.
to
They're
there.
two completely different programs. What was
Collegiate Academy.
Collegiate Academy. No,
I think
no,
I
Collegiate
answered that
Academy,
through-
That's going to be answered through whatever Colin. We're basically whatever Colin decides.
They
to
drive
do.
those courses, and I think we've accounted for both those with the virtual plus ability. Kids can still take those classes.
Even this morning, those conversations were going, and I think that we're adding those to the FAQ for parents. We may not have an answer till tomorrow, but that was being discussed with our counseling department.
And I'm assuming also with NTTC as well for those dual classes at the high school level.
Yes, ma'am.
And then STEM Academy was your other question.
STEM.
And they do not see as much of an issue with possible content with STEM Academy, so that would still be able to happen virtually.
Yeah. It will not be an exact replication.
Right.
There will still be a STEM academy, and there will still be STEM programs and things that go with it, but it would not be an exact replication.
And I think, we'll continue to emphasize to parents while we absolutely honor their choice, going back to, I think Dr. Thornell's first, it's not the same as in person. I mean, there's no way we're going to stand up here and say it's going to be exactly the same.
I will pass the mic.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Okay, I'm going to fire these off pretty quick, so it's just, it may go over 3, Catherine. Dr. Rogers, have we talked to Coach Ford about any club impact as it relates to, now understand LISD is the number one priority, but students who are in clubs, extending the school day, what's going to happen with them making it to their practices, et cetera?
No, we haven't had that discussion. We didn't want to have that discussion until we had the discussion with the board first. But, what I found out is being an old coach myself is clubs will adjust, I promise you, because they're going to want our kids to participate. And so, if we were extended by 45 minutes, I'd be a lot more concerned. I've always been concerned about, high school being extended because some of those kids go to work, they have other requirements, but to extend the school day 25 minutes, which is still less than what some of our neighbors already have their school day extended, I think is doable, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there is the key, because this question came in, other most ISDs are actually doing this type of model where they're banking minutes versus extending the school year. So it's going to be fairly common, at least in what we care about, North Texas, for example, our peers are leaning in this direction in whatever variation of banking minutes.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely right.
You showed some shields. It was hard for me to see those. I'll see those later. I assume at the middle school level where teachers don't have desks, or high school level where they have tables, will have some type of accommodation as well?
Yeah, we will, there's no doubt our emphasis is going to be on social distancing in classrooms. I'm going to be frank, that's very difficult, and particularly in high school classrooms. It's also probably going to require some teachers to move some of their stuff out of their classrooms. Some of them have sofas and different things. Well, you've taken up some space that I might need to spread the desk. So we're certainly going to expect our principals to have some of those conversations. We certainly are going to get enough face shields, not face masks. We're getting lots of face masks, but enough face shields to give all of our teachers face shields, which we believe is certainly better for them to teach with, and certainly most of that emphasis on face shields is going to be elementary teachers and, of course, our self-contained special ed teachers. But we're going to put in place as many different safety mechanisms, whether it's desk shields or whatever that we can to provide some social distance safety.
Okay, thank you. yeah, here's where 21st century design and strategic design come together and have created a problem for us in the way the classrooms are set up. Just in anticipation of, we're going to probably get hit with, 20, 30 emails a day on the details of all this now, right? So just an opportunity for you to comment on things. I mean, Marath talked about if there was an outbreak, if there was an incident in school, that would, kind of running drills on how we would handle that. What's it look like if we have an outbreak? For example, strength and conditioning at LHS, we had an issue. Enforcement of masks. I mean, sometimes we have a hard time just enforcing, and here's where we need parents' help, the use of a cell phone in class. Now we're trying to get kids to social distance, to make sure they show up with a mask, etc. And so we're putting a lot of burden on staff. Passing periods look different, probably got more people in the hallways, making sure kids distance. I mean, a lot of those things I know are probably yet to come. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say. There's no doubt, Mr. Miller, we've had numerous discussions about when you implement rules, how are you going to enforce it? Because, we are going to have to depend on our students and our parents to help us with things like face coverings in our secondary schools and so on. But, I go to the grocery store, or I go to Lowe's, or I go to, and of course it's a little easier right now with the governor's order. I mean, the governor's order makes it pretty clear what we're supposed to do. And so, there's no doubt that we still have we've done a lot of work on all the different guidelines for all the different levels, as Dr. Rapp talked about, but we still have to operationalize that, and we are actually having a little preview of that with our principals tomorrow afternoon.
Okay. I know that one of the comments was made about campus visitors, or there's been a concern expressed. Certainly would agree that we should limit that as much as possible. What about the very valuable efforts by communities and schools and mentors? Have we considered how that's going to look?
Well, we haven't, and I'm going to make sure, of course, community and schools employees are not considered visitors, but we are certainly going to have to, determine what a visitor is. I mean, a visitor is not a parent that needs to come get their child and take them to, the orthodontist or whatever. But we have a lot of visitors, and if we are in mitigation level orange, we're going to restrict a lot of visitors. And, none of us like doing that. I mean, none of us like that our kids aren't going to go on field trips or all these other different criteria, but it is the situation that we're in. But we'll provide some clarity on some of the other things like community and schools volunteers in the near future.
Great. And last question, and I think this is for staff and for students. What protocols are we going to have and maybe Marath or the governor are going to regulate this, for notification that someone has had exposure, either a teacher or a student? Is there a legal requirement or some other requirement for them to notify so that we can do the tracking and see who an exposed person has been around, or a person with COVID shows up at the campus, they have the virus, and then we have to do tracking there? I mean, those are two different scenarios, but just curious how we might look at that.
Yeah, and we have some specific guidelines, and there were actually some new ones that were provided yesterday by TEA, and to be honest with you, Mr. Miller, I haven't looked through that. I know Melanie Vincelette is on the WebEx, but she's actually on vacation. I think she's joined us from Florida, but please know, I just know, for instance, when you mentioned the UIL thing at LHS, we're going to notify parents if their child's at risk because of specific contact, but we also have to follow guidelines such as HIPAA and so on. So we're not going to broadcast, names and so on, because those people have a right to privacy. So we're going to have to, but we'll follow the protocols that have been given to us by TEA and by the health department in Denton. And if we need to, we can put that out as part of our communication, as far as just to provide some certainty to parents as far as how that works.
Sounds good. Appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller. My only questions and
Ms. Cox?
oh, Ms. Cox, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. You go.
Okay,
Sorry.
So I have like 3 pages of questions and comments, so I'm just going to email them, but I'm going to take Mr. Miller's approach.
Well, touch on some of them.
Well, I just have a few comments,
Okay.
and then 2 questions I do really have.
Okay.
So, to me, the biggest thing in this whole thing is clear communication. And I'm not saying the district doesn't do it, but now more than ever, communication is the key. And we saw it with the online learning where we were getting calls from teachers not understanding if they were supposed to do 2 days or 3 days online. So all that trickles down from the top. And so I'm just asking as the leadership staff here that whatever we communicate down to the principals communicate down to their staff, the staff communicates down to the teachers, because interpretation is real. And what I think you said might be different from what the actual message is. So I just think that's really important that we all understand that. The other thing I would like to see is, I know we have a COVID page on the district, the FAQs. I would actually like to see that up by staff. It's too hard to find it on the district. I actually had to do a search. So I'd like to see it as a tab of its own, that we could start addressing more of these questions. Really, we're really kind of in an unknown, Dr. Rogers, because, I mean, what you kind of said is we're going to be working on that, we're working on that. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but there's still so many unknowns that we can't answer today, that the parents and staff are in angst of, where am I working? What am I doing? Do I want to send my kid to school? Or, what are the protocols going to look like? Do my kids wear masks? Like my daughter was in a choir class. There's 100 kids in that class. How do you do choir with 100 kids? I mean, a lot of those questions just need to be answered. Then on the survey forms.
Well, let me just say,
Okay.
Ms. Cox, there's no doubt that parents and staff, as I've said a couple of times, are going to get a lot more detail by the 1st of next week. We totally agree and understand that parents have to have a lot more detail before they can make a selection of what learning option works for their kid. And so we have the detail. We just, I promise you, we have the detail. We just weren't, we didn't feel like we could spend 6 hours going through it, and so we needed to. But we will provide the detail before we have that expectation that they make some choices. As far as the staff need to, also, I get what you said about last year, but staff needs to read and follow directions too. I mean, some of them we provided and they don't read and follow the directions. And so we need that to be, hey, when we provide stuff, and we'll make sure that it doesn't get lost translation-wise down the pike, but follow what you're given and then ask a question if not. But I totally get about the website. I think that's a good suggestion.
My other thing is the survey forms. So how are we going to make sure that every student is accounted for? Because I think that's really important, of people that just, well, I never saw the survey. I'm working a lot. I didn't know, because to me, 52,000 plus students, we better have an answer for. Are you coming back? Are you homeschooling? What are you doing? So we know for sure this is what our staffing model looks like.
And that's a great question. It's a question that Brian Kobeck and his group has been, because, while we use, online forms and so on, we still don't have all of our parents that even update their information. And so it's a question that his group is wrestling with. I don't know, Brian, if you have any answers or just sort of where we're at, but please know that we get it, that we've got to make sure all 52,000
it's like the
tell
census.
us something. Yeah.
The census where you keep calling until you respond.
That's a good question. What we're working through is a couple different things. One of the challenges we have is the timing on this as well. When you look at when people are coming back, especially at the elementary, if you're looking at your attendance clerks, whatnot. So we're looking at trying to centralize support, so if people have to come to a building or campus, a mechanism to do that. Additionally, every year when we open up Skyward forms, families have questions. I can't remember my family access password, et cetera. Just like in the spring, we set up call centers. Our plan is to set up a centralized call center, because the minute we open that form, we're expecting a lot of people needing support, so that if it's password related, they can go to the self-service to reset their password. If they've already been logged in, they can call a number and have a pool of people to call and help them. And then additionally, trying to make sure that if, from a campus perspective, run those daily reports to see who hasn't opted in and have a team of people working those lists to call people directly and have them in a position that they can actually help them make that selection while they're on the phone with them. So it's really trying to tackle this in 4 different ways to try to make sure that every student's accounted for to the best that we can. And I think what Dr. Rogers said about being clear in the communication, that we're going to try, this, and this, but at the end of the day, if we don't hear from you, we're going to self-opt you into the in-person option.
That's one of the reasons I think y'all felt strongly that it need to be a Skyward form and not a typical survey, if you will, not a Survey Monkey, not a Google form, but it needs to be attached to Skyward, and that's something that we'll be talking with principals about in their emergency meeting tomorrow.
And it's going to be simplified where it's not attached to all these other forms. It's just the selection of the learning option.
We'll follow up the rest of
the rest of stuff will be
follow
later.
Up after.
So it's, to clarify, it's through Skyward?
It will
so
be.
How are you addressing that with our kindergartners coming in? They will already have a Skyward account, or how will they know to?
Some will have to, sign up for the first time. So there's a mechanism in there for that. And there's going to be some people that have never used Family Access, and they're going to need support. So one of the challenges, to Dr. Rapp's point with Skyward, is you've got to validate the parent, and it's very hard to do that over the phone. So what we're looking at is having certain options where you're looking at specific information to try to allow that validation to happen over the phone with the right information, or a mechanism to actually come to campus where somebody can show an ID and show that there's guardianship. And I think the other part to Skyward versus, let's say, a SurveyMonkey or a Google form, your custodian is defined in Skyward. So we really got to make sure that the proper custodian is filling out that survey. That's the only system that we have that internal control. So it's going to happen through Skyward.
We're going to have to bring some staff, particularly at elementary schools, back, some attendance clerks, whatever, because they don't report until late July, but we're going to need their services to help us with this next week. So those are all the discussions we're having with principals. We understand it's a concern. There's no mechanism that's 100%, but we feel good about this 4-pronged approach that we're going to catch as many as we can. And
So you're now a call center. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have another number.
They're good at creating a call center. They've done great work prior.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Is that it, Ms. Cox? Okay, we're kind of along the same line, because I did have clear communication. I addressed that earlier in the survey. I want to make sure that like Ms. Cox said, that what we're writing is what they're understanding, and that we're on the same page. And sometimes I think we get caught up in our education lingo or our way of talking, and it's not the way that our parents hear things. And so I want to be really, even if you have to reach out to us board members, we will definitely read and give you input, and we're very clear on that. I would love to see an access of our media partners, especially with our kindergartners, in the importance of that this is important, that you go ahead and register your kindergartner, and that there's some information that will be forthcoming. And we need to be able to contact you. And I believe if we do that, I believe with the survey for our parents, and I think our media partners have been great partners, especially even in the survey that just concluded, in getting that information out, that LISD and Ms. Brim's office, and providing that information to them. But I want to make sure that continues. And I have a lot of little minute detailed questions, and I love that we'll think differently about how our questions, our FAQs about COVID, are placed on our website. I also ask, though, that if it be possible, that we also have an FAQ for our staff. We're seeing a lot of our staff reach out to the board members, and I believe it would be beneficial if we had not only a parent and student, but also a staff FAQ. There's a lot of questions that our staff have about what's going on and the decisions that are being made. And so I think it's important that we make that available for them, and that they would know, hey, before I send an email, maybe I could go and check here. So if we could get that information out. I would love to see our front office staff not become just COVID monitors. And I don't know exactly how to not do that, but I would love to see our staff explore some of the non-handheld devices for entry for students and others into a building where somebody doesn't have to physically step up to you and take your temperature. And I know that those are probably costly, but so is the time of our staff. And so, I think a lot of people in our community don't understand that our front office staff are not there just to let you in. They actually have duties that they perform on a daily basis that is essential to keeping those campuses running. And so want to make sure of that. Bus protocol. If there's only 6 kids on a bus, I don't want them all on 2 seats. So I want to make sure that bus protocol is thought about, and that we're training those drivers, and that we're monitoring that in some way. If there's 20 kids on a bus, they each need to be in a different seat. I mean, and I know that we're thinking about these things, but this is just some of the things that have popped into my mind. And like I said, I have a whole list of them. Also, the fine arts. As soon as we can get information to our symphonies, to our bands, to our theaters about what their year's going to look like. They've usually are so deep into planning already, and it's been at a standstill. And for these kids that are seniors whose lives depend, or not lives depend, but their futures depend is what I meant. Their futures in some colleges depend on their performances and things like that. I want to make sure that we still have that avenue. And a lot of them pay for the productions through ticket sales, things like that. Just all those things, as soon as we can get those figured out, if we can share those. And I know that some of this stuff is going to be an ongoing process of us having decisions and having things defined for us and how we're going to work this out. But the minute a decision is made, if we could add it to that FAQ. I mean, and if we don't have a decision, but we're working on it, let's share that. I think sometimes our parents, our students, our staff, they just want to know that we're still having those conversations. And I think deep down they understand that, but sometimes they just need that reassurance that we still are doing that. Also, I want to make sure that we're clear that if you're come back to school and you as a student test positive for COVID, what the process is there for. I mean, I'm sure that we will then, it'd be like at home or home learning, as if they got any other illness, if they're out for a time being. But just to make sure that they understand that if you decide to choose virtual, that you still are going to have to meet those 2-week requirement, because it's not just a shifting of your body into a different learning format. Could also include a shifting of staff. And so just making sure that our parents, as they're making these decisions for their kids, that they understand those processes. And there is detail, but...
And Ms. Sells, let me just comment on a couple of things. One, the UIL events, of course, are governed by UIL.
Right.
As I forwarded to you all this morning, we got something just this morning regarding UIL strength and conditioning and sports specific can start back up on Monday. And actually, they even said that in that communication that personal contact in football, limited, can begin on Monday. So they continue to move, and they also made it clear that as of right now, they still plan for their sports to start and keep their normal schedule. Now, they didn't address the fine arts thing, but I promise you, the fine arts in UIL is a very powerful group, and I have no doubt they're talking about that. Regarding a student that is in person and then has to go be self-quarantined or whatever, we have a mechanism to take care of those students. We didn't discuss that, but I promise you they will be taken care of as far as remote instruction while they're distant from their in-person class. And so Dr. Thornell and his group have created and are continuing to work on that to where they don't lose out on instruction.
Okay.
Ms.
I
Hassett?
have a request. With that instruction that you were just talking about, the guidelines on what to do with students and families, when can we see a draft of that? And hopefully that will be ASAP, because I'd like to see a draft of that as well as the instruction or the information to staff on what they have to do along the same process when they have to take days off. So it might be draft version, but I think it's good for us to know while we continue to have questions come in from the community what our proposed plan is right now.
Yeah, and we actually have a couple of things. One, for employees, and I don't want to get too much out of my realm, but for employees, we follow the guidelines from the CARES Act, and you know, as I said, that's why we direct them to the people that are trained, and that's our benefits office.
We have a copy of that.
Yeah.
Well,
I
don't know that there's a copy of anything to have, but we'll provide something. And then as far as the other guidelines, I don't know,
So,
Dr.
yeah, ultimately, I would say this goes back to the TEA guidance that just was released yesterday. We did have some processes already drafted about students and when they have suspected COVID, but we're now needing to go back and look at those versus the TEA guidance. But once we know that it's not as much drafty, then, you know, we'll be able to.
I want to see it before we send it to you, but I promise you, we are working on it frankly, and we hope to have that to y'all certainly by, you know, I'd say the middle of next week is fair. Or...
Well, yeah, we've got to get, I would say we have Thrive next week with our principals, and some of the things that we're discussing today too, we're building time in to get their feedback, because our groups had good representation, as you all saw, but we also have the ability with Thrive to ask all of our principals some of these questions. So it may be after Thrive is the only thing I would request.
That's right. I forgot.
And one other thing I wanted to mention to the board so that we're aware, I've already spoken with Dr. Rogers. In November, we have a presidential election, and the county always needs our schools, so we'll have to be using our schools for elections polling, and so Dr. Rogers assures us that we'll be using entrances and exits that won't contaminate and cause safety concerns. But the county literally can't do a presidential election without using our schools, and so we just have to make sure. And I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that little fact.
That's absolutely right. And, you know, so what we would, and I know Ms. Riggle, who's our contact with the Denton County Elections Office, has already been in conversation with them, but, you know, they would have an access to a gym, and that's all they would, you know, those types of facilities, so they would not be coming through our, you know, the main traffic areas of our campuses, but they cannot pull off major presidential elections without the use of schools across the state and probably across the nation. So,
Ms. Prosnick?
So for all the new guidelines that TEA has provided us, what funding have they offered?
Well, that's a look nice. I appreciate you teeing that up, Ms. Prosnick. You know, overall, you know, I do appreciate the work of TA. They've been given a tough task too, but you know, they've limited funding. They've boxed us in some corners as far as some flexibility with the types of learning, and as we talked about, the hybrid model and so on. So I guess my best answer is none.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick, for that. Mr. Miller, do you have anything else?
Oh, he's gone. He's missing.
Where'd he go?
Did he run away?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Ooh, oh, okay, there you are. Okay, thank you for letting us know. Ms. Cox has one more?
I did have one more thing. TEA did mention it, and I did think it was a good idea, and maybe you'll think differently, but they had talked about having a COVID representative, and maybe it's something the district considers because, a couple comments were made. It can be a nightmare for the school going, well, what about this? What about this? It would be nice if we had just either a one-point contact.
A go-to person.
A go-to person for COVID.
Email me, Vince Willett.
That would be really, really nice for, I think.
Yeah, I'll probably appoint Mr. Crownover to be that person. Sorry, Jeff. No, no, we'll figure something out.
Tick you off today.
That's funny.
I'll answer their questions.
Well, I think at this juncture, those detailed questions, if questions that you submitted were not answered.
Lisanne might have a question.
I can't see past her.
Hi. The only thing I had really left is just after, and I know we all have gotten these, we have just gotten so many emails from parents and teachers, and I kind of thought, well, some of them are asking pointed questions like, what's going to happen? Maybe we could put on the website, you talked about a COVID person, maybe a COVID question, email that people could ask questions, because a lot of them, these emails that we get, we'll just be asking you guys anyway. So, I don't know if that's.
You put it in the FAQ.
Yeah.
Well, and
Or the
those
FAQ.
those emails are also seen by administration, and if they are COVID related, they are responded to by administration.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, the board sometimes gets emails from our parents or staff, and y'all make sure that, we're either CC'd on it or you forward it to us, because sometimes we are and sometimes we aren't, which is their prerogative. I'm not saying.
But that's something
Comment on that,
could be
Catherine?
explored. Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I think to Ms. Lasanne's, Dr. Rogers' point. I mean, we, up until recently on two hot topics, this and another, I think we've all tried to be advocates and take our elected roles seriously and advocate, just like we would ask you to reach out to the legislature, and we would expect you get a response back from our state rep that we would do the same. But it is, with all due respect, becoming a little bit difficult for us because many of these things are so much just in time and outside of the normal purview of what the board has. And so, I know I've tried to respond to everybody, but while we've been on this meeting, most of you have not seen this, we've probably gotten 20 emails. And a lot of those emails are really things that probably would be best answered quickly, but in some type of venue where people can ask those questions and then they get updated by some type of experts. I'm just highlighting this so that people just understand if we don't get back to them, we're not disrespecting them. It's just overwhelming. And as people have seen today, all 2,100 people on this call and almost 3 hours into it, there's still a lot of things that our staff has to work through. And as much as we'd like to come together, the 7 of us, and with our Power Ranger rings and make things happen, there's a lot to be done. And, we need a little more patience, but certainly do not want to disrespect, disregard, or disincentivize people.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that Dr. Rogers will look at if you are agreeing with Ms. Lasanne's suggestion that we put a COVID question email on that page. Maybe we can charge Dr. Rogers with
Yeah, that's not a problem.
doing that.
I don't have a problem with that, and I think Mr. Miller's right. Really, while we don't like to get inundated with emails, we're grateful because it might ask a question that we haven't thought about. Probably not, but we certainly use that correspondence to try to make sure that we've touched all our bases. So, please know that we don't take it personal, and yet don't take it personal if we don't respond to every email in as timely manner as you wish.
Okay. Okay, so I'm looking to make sure nobody else's hands is up. And what I was going to say is if you did not get an answer to a question, or you think of something, which I'm sure all of us will as we get in our cars and drive away, please just continue to, I guess, email you, Dr. Rogers.
Absolutely.
Those questions, and I would hope that, and I believe that staff will make those part of those FAQs if they feel that that's necessary, and we can continue to move forward to get the education for our kids in the way that they deserve.
Ms. Sells?
So, yes.
I'm sorry, just real clarification too. So I will be emailing some questions. I would just ask that whatever responses that we respond, the whole board has responded on any question that's asked, so we all see what
From
those
this
answers and questions were.
period. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
we'll use the previous questions and sort of glean through that. And so, you know, if you send them to me, but make sure and CC Ms. Riggle, you know, she's really good with those Google Docs.
I do have I want to make sure I understand as we leave, that was the decision made that we will extend the day for in-person learning? And when will we be publishing the release times?
Don't we have to vote on the calendar? It's
Well,
a revote.
Yeah.
So it says.
We can have you, we will have, you have to take action on the calendar. Now, really, the calendar is not always about minutes, so I don't know. I mean, I'll get clarification later if you really have to take action on adding minutes versus the days. But if so, we can have you take action on it next Tuesday. So, and then certainly very soon after that, we have the end times. You know, we just needed to have the discussion with y'all before we move forward.
And if once that is determined, if you could just email the board, that would be appreciated, just so
Absolutely.
that we know. Yeah, perfect. I'm seeing Mr. Crownover over there already starting to research that, so appreciate that. Okay, well, if there is no other comments or questions, then I will adjourn this meeting, and the time is 3:02 p.m. Thanks, everyone, for your patience.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, I thought we were going to have an intermission there for a minute.
No, me too.
Kendra Scott has a question.
Well, he had said at 2 o'clock, and I thought he needed to get up and walk for his knee. And so that's why I.
Jenny, on your question, we don't have to take action.
Okay.
I'm with you on my time.
Because we're not changing
She could stay 2
Got it.
hours after for extended day.